The whole world sees sleep as a sign of weakness. People are punished for it. Kids run with rocks on their backs until they fall face first into the dust, while instructors yell that rest is for the dead. And only one guy has a window hanging before his eyes that speaks. Want to get stronger? Just close your eyes and sleep. Ethan Clark opens his eyes and stares up at the stone ceiling. His head is pounding. Straw as thick as a finger pricks his back. The sun beats down on his face through a window with no glass and no curtains. Below, iron clangs, and someone screams at the top of their lungs. Ethan sits up. Bare walls. The floor is ice cold. The air reeks of sweat and rust. He looks at his hands. The same fingers, but his body feels lighter, younger. He touches his face. The same nose. So it's him, just not there. The last thing he remembers, a taxi. He collapsed into it after 30 hours of playing a new game, closed his eyes for a second. A blow, darkness. Then this ceiling. A coma, or something worse. Or something much more interesting. And then a translucent bluish window with text flashes before his eyes. Ethan blinks. The text remains. Rest system activated. Experience is earned during deep sleep in N3 and REM phases. Sleep quality 23 out of 100. The room is too bright. The mattress is hard. Noise level is critical. And this is where the strangest part begins. Ethan is a former student of the Department of Somnology. He knows more about sleep phases than anyone else in the universe. And this thing is telling him that strength comes through sleep. He walks over to the window and looks down. The academy courtyard. Dozens of teenagers are running laps with sandbags on their backs. Their faces are gray. Their eyes are sunken. A guy stumbles and slams his face into the dust. An instructor rushes over and yells that sleep is for corpses and that he'd better get up or face punishment. The guy gets to his feet, his legs shaking, and runs on. And Ethan understands. This world hates sleep. Here, they take pride in staying awake for days on end. They pump themselves full of junk just to keep their eyes open. But in his head, there's a window that promises strength precisely through sleep. Imagine this situation. Ethan sits back down. Sleep quality, 23. It's insulting. He knows that a dark room is needed for a normal N3 phase. The temperature is around 18 degrees. Silence. A comfortable surface. Zero blue light. Here, it's the exact opposite. He surveys the cell. The stone keeps it cool. That's a plus. A window without shutters. A minus. The door has a finger-wide gap. Sound travels freely. The mattress is a joke. Ethan steps out into the empty hallway. Everyone's at practice. He heads down to the common room. Long tables, the smell of porridge and sour bread. Against the wall, racks of old rags. He rummages through the raincoats and pulls out 3 dark, heavy ones, enough for a curtain. He goes back upstairs, stretches the raincoat across the window, hooks it onto 2 old nails in the stone. Darkness falls over the room like a blessing. Light still seeps in at the edges, but it's already twice as good. Next, the mattress. Ethan runs to the utility shed in the backyard, grabs an armful of hay, spreads it over the mattress, covers it with a 3rd raincoat. Lies down. Softer. Bearable. He stuffs the cracks in the door with scraps of fabric. The noise dies down. The window flickers. Sleep quality, 41 out of 100. Twice as much as 0 after 20 minutes of work. Ethan smirks. In his own world, he was a failure, a dropout. Dropped out of college in his sophomore year, lived in his mother's basement, gamed for 30 hours at a time. The only thing he was truly good at was sleeping. Phases, rhythms, temperature, light, breathing, posture. He could fall asleep in 7 minutes if the conditions were right. And right now, that knowledge is worth more than any sword in this courtyard. Ethan closes his eyes, breathing 4, 7, 8. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. His body goes limp. The noise recedes. He drifts off in 9 minutes. The window refreshes. Phase N3 reached. Quality multiplier 1.4. Experience gained. Ethan is asleep. Inside, teenagers are collapsing from exhaustion. Instructors are yelling. Someone is throwing up around the corner. And on the 3rd floor, in a dark cell behind a curtain of old raincoats, a guy from another world is mindlessly leveling up while lying with his eyes closed. He sleeps for 6 hours, wakes up on his own, head clear, body light. The window hangs before his eyes. Level 2, skill unlocked, light step, minus 15% fatigue while walking. Ethan stretches. 6 hours at a quality of 41 gave him a whole level. Raise the quality to 80, and he'll get 2 or 3 levels overnight. He needs a real mattress, thick curtains, something for his ears, and he needs to find out what they eat here before bed. He goes down to the hall. Evening. The students eat silently and quickly. Their faces are blank. Someone dozes off over their plate and immediately jerks awake with a guilty look. Ethan sits down. They set porridge with meat in front of him, bread, a mug of something dark. He sniffs it. Bitter, sharp. The local equivalent of caffeine. He pushes the mug away. The guy across from him stares at him like he's crazy. Ethan asks where to get milk or honey. The guy mumbles that milk is in the kitchen and honey is only available from the doctor's. Ethan finishes his porridge. He tosses the bread aside. Heavy food is the enemy of REM sleep. He heads to the kitchen. A fat woman in an apron squints at him suspiciously. He asks for warm milk for his stomach. She pours it. Ethan returns and drinks slowly. Tryptophan plus warmth. Basic sleep nutrition. He lies down. The curtain is in place. The hay is soft. Breathing 4, 7, 8. 9 minutes. Sleep. Window. N3 phase. Multiplier 1.4. Accrual. Thus passes Ethan Clarke's first day in the world of Erden. He didn't raise a sword, didn't run a single lap, didn't block a single blow. He hung the curtains, stuffed the mattress with hay. He drank some milk and went to sleep, and became stronger than anyone who was throwing up in the courtyard with a sack of stones on their back. The morning of the 3rd day began with a scream. Someone was pounding on the cell door so hard that rags fell out of the cracks onto the floor. Ethan opened his eyes. The system window showed level 4. In 2 nights of quality sleep, he had gained 3 levels. His body felt different. Not stronger, but more composed. His muscles responded faster. His vision was sharper. It was like the feeling after a perfect 9 hours at home, when the world seems sharp and vivid. The door swung open. Standing in the doorway was a broad-shouldered guy with a senior class patch. He said that Clarke was 40 minutes late for roll call and that Instructor Horn was summoning him personally. Ethan stretched, got up, went out. The academy courtyard was flooded with morning sunlight. 100 students stood in rows. Their faces were all the same, gray, worn out. Some were swaying on their feet. One guy had a nosebleed and didn't even notice. Instructor Horn was pacing in front of the formation, broad, ruddy, a scar across his entire cheek. His hands were shaking, slightly but noticeably. The typical tremor from chronic sleep deprivation. Ethan had seen hands like that on long-haul truckers after 3-day runs. Horn spotted Ethan and pointed at him. He said their sleepyhead had finally shown up, that while everyone else had been grinding since 4 in the morning, this worm had been snoozing in his burrow, that it was time to show what he'd learned in 3 days of idleness. 1 round against Marcus. Marcus stepped into the ring. tall, muscular, pale to the point of being blue. The bruises under his eyes were so dark they looked painted on. The best fighter in the circuit. Everyone knew his name. He trained 20 hours a day, slept 2 hours, drank stimulants like water. The crowd came alive. Finally, some entertainment. The chubby sleepyhead was about to get smashed against the rocks. Ethan stepped into the center of the ring. He took a stance, a crooked one. He had no idea how to stand properly in a fight, but he was well rested. Marcus struck first, quickly, powerfully. The fist flew straight into his jaw. Ethan saw that punch coming, not because he was faster, but because his visual cortex was working at full capacity. 8 hours of REM sleep restore the neural connections responsible for reaction time. The brain of a well-rested person processes visual information 30% faster than the brain of someone who hasn't slept. Ethan swayed to the side. The fist flew past him. Marcus flinched. His eyes went out of focus for a split second. He struck again, with his left, with a wide swing, too wide a swing. Motor control declines after 20 hours without sleep. Movement accuracy drops by 40%. Ethan knew these figures by heart. He stepped back. Marcus struck a third time. He missed. His foot twisted. His knee wobbled. 3 seconds into the fight, the best fighter in the class was already gasping for air. His body looked strong, but his nervous system was shattered. His muscle fibers weren't receiving clear signals from his brain. Every movement cost him 3 times more energy than it should have. Ethan walked over calmly. He placed his palm on Marcus's chest. He pushed, gently. Marcus fell. He just fell backward. His legs couldn't hold him. His muscles gave out the moment the weight shifted. He lay on the ground and stared up with a blank look in his eyes. Silence. Complete silence. 100 people were silent. Horn stood with his mouth agape. Ethan yawned. He covered his mouth with his hand. He said he was sorry and asked if he could go back to sleep because he hadn't finished his deep sleep phase. Gorn turned the color of a boiled beet, but he didn't say a word because the result was on the ground. Marcus was lying there and couldn't get up. Ethan turned around and walked back. Behind him, the courtyard erupted in whispers. By evening, the whole academy knew about this fight. The story was retold dozens of times, and each time it became with details. Some said Ethan had used an invisible essence technique. Some whispered he was a demon. Some claimed Marcus had been poisoned. No one could believe the simple truth. The guy who'd slept for 9 hours turned out to be faster than the guy who hadn't slept for 3 days. The next morning, Ethan was summoned to the vice-rector. The office was dark and dusty. An elderly man with a neat beard and teeth yellowed from stimulants sat at the desk. He stared at Ethan for a long time. Then he said that based on the results of the observation and the recommendation of Instructor Horn, Clark was being transferred to the elite Zarya unit. Ethan blinked. He asked what the Zarya unit was. The vice-rector explained. The 6 best students of the Silverhold Academy, a combat unit for special missions, under the direct command of Sarah Venholt. Ethan asked if he could stay in the regular stream. The deputy replied that this was not a request, but an order. Ethan sighed. He understood what was happening. He hadn't been promoted. He had been placed under observation. A mysterious guy who sleeps all day yet defeats the best fighter. It's easier to control someone like that from within an elite unit than to let him go back to the general barracks. Ethan gathered his belongings from his cell. Raincoats used as curtains, hay for a mattress, scraps of fabric for the cracks, a warm mug. He made his way to the barracks of the Zarya unit in the west wing of the academy, a separate building, 2 stories, stone walls thicker than in the general barracks. Quieter. That was already a plus. He entered the common room. 5 people were sitting at the table. They all looked up. The first person he saw was Sarah Venholt. red hair pulled back into a tight knot. Her face was beautiful but haggard. The dark circles under her eyes were so deep they looked like shadows cast by her cheekbones. Her back was straight, her gaze was hard. She looked at Ethan as if he were dirt blown in by the wind. Marcus sat next to her. He had a bandage on his wrist and anger in his eyes. He had been in the squad too. Across from them sat a small girl with a light braid and trembling fingers. Lena Carroll, the healer. She was the only one who nodded to Ethan. The other two guys, with identical short haircuts and soldierly faces, didn't even look. Sarah stood up. She walked over to Ethan. She stopped a step away. She was half a head taller than him. Sarah said she didn't care what stunt he'd pulled in the courtyard, that in her squad, they slept 4 hours, trained from dawn until midnight, that if he couldn't handle the regiment, they'd kick him out onto the street. And out there, right now, was the tide of distortion, and creatures that couldn't tell the elite from the trash. Ethan looked at her fingers trembling from caffeine, at the vein throbbing at her temple, at the microscopic twitch in her left eyelid. Classic symptoms of stage 4 chronic sleep deprivation. Another year like this, and she'll start hallucinating. He said he understood. Sarah turned and left. Ethan was given a room at the end of the hall, a small one, with a window facing west. The evening sun would beat right in, bad for falling asleep. But the window is small. One cloak will suffice. He hung the curtain, spread out the hay, plugged the cracks, lay down. The system window flashed. Sleep quality 44 out of 100. Slightly better than in the old cell. The walls are thicker and there's less noise. Ethan closed his eyes. The new chapter of his life in this world began just as the first one had, with a good night's sleep. The first week in the Zarya squad was hell. Not physically. Ethan didn't participate in their hellish training. He simply couldn't. The system didn't grant him experience through physical exertion. He tried. On the second day, he went out to the training ground and spent 2 hours punching a wooden post. The system window didn't budge. 0 experience. 0 progress. His body grew tired just like a normal person's. His muscles ached. His joints throbbed. But his level stayed the same. Essence didn't accumulate through sweat and pain like it did for everyone else. Only through sleep. That meant Ethan was useless during the day. Absolutely useless. And the squad saw it. Marcus made no secret of his contempt. Every morning when Ethan came out for breakfast later than everyone else, Marcus would say loudly, "Here comes our combat sleeper." It's nice to know that while we're working our asses off until we get bloody blisters, someone's just lounging on a pillow. Two guys with soldierly faces named Dirk and Rand laughed. Not maliciously, just because Marcus was the senior member and it was safer to laugh than not to. Sarah didn't laugh. She did worse. She ignored Ethan completely, didn't look at him, didn't talk to him, didn't include him in plans. During the morning briefings, she listed everyone's roles. Marcus, vanguard. Dirk, flank. Rand, support. Lena, healing. Clark. Pause. Clark stands in the back and doesn't get in the way. It hurt more than insults. Insults meant you were being noticed. Being ignored meant you weren't considered human. Ethan endured it, not because he was patient, but because he had no choice. There was a tidal wave of distortion outside. Creatures came down from the northern mountains every week. Those who were kicked out of the academy ended up in the militia, and the militia was dying in droves. Ethan knew his only chance of survival was to stay with the squad and level up through his dreams. So he focused on what he was good at, on his dreams. Every evening he improved his room. On the 4th day, he found an old woolen blanket with holes in the storeroom. He patched it up with thread pulled from burlap. On the 5th day, he discovered that the academy kitchen had dried chamomile. The cook used it as a seasoning for meat. Ethan asked for a handful. He brewed it before bed. Chamomile contains apigenin. Apigenin binds to benzodiazepine receptors in the brain and induces mild drowsiness. His sleep quality jumped to 52. On the 6th day, he figured out the temperature. The academy's stone walls were cold at night, too cold. Below 15 degrees, the body starts to shiver in its sleep, and this disrupts the N3 phase. Ethan found a solution. He heated stones by the kitchen hearth, wrapped them in rags, and placed them under the blanket an hour before bed. By the time he fell asleep, the bed was warm while the air remained cool. The perfect combination. Sleep quality, 58. On the 7th day, he made an eye mask. He cut a strip from a black cloak, folded it in half, tied it with a ribbon. Complete darkness. Melatonin was no longer disrupted by residual light. Sleep quality, 63. Level 7 in just 1 week. 7 levels in 7 days simply because he slept properly. The system window displayed new skills: light footwork, keen eyesight, quiet breathing, fortified body. Each skill provided a small bonus. Fatigue decreased, vision improved, breathing became deeper, muscles firmed up. Not from training, from sleep. His body was rebuilding itself every night. N3 phase was responsible for physical recovery and growth. REM phase for neural connections and coordination. Together, they achieved what months of training would have. But no one knew this. To the squad, Ethan remained a lazy fat guy who hid in his room. And while he slept, the world outside grew more terrifying. The tide of the corruption was rising. There were more creatures. Every week, the Academy sent squads out to patrol the outskirts of Silverhold. On the night Ethan reached level 7, the Dawn Squad received its first combat mission. A pack of warped wolves had been spotted 2 hours' walk north of the city. 6 to 8 of them. For an elite squad, this should have been routine. Sira woke everyone up at 3 in the morning. Ethan woke up to a knock on the door. He opened it. Sira was standing there in full combat gear. She said they had a mission and that Clark was coming with them. He'd stay in the back. He wouldn't get in the way. As usual. They set out in the dark. They walked in silence. Ethan looked at his companions. Marcus was walking with a heavy gait. His shoulders were slumped. Dirk stumbled over every tree root. Rand yawned constantly. Lena walked last, and her fingers were shaking so badly that she pressed them against her thighs. Sira led the group with a straight back and a stony face, but Ethan saw her sway twice on level ground. Vestibular dysfunction. Sleep deprivation destroys the vestibular system. She could pass out at any moment. They were heading into battle. 6 exhausted people against a pack of creatures from the tide. And Ethan, well-rested, fresh, useless in battle. Or maybe not. He started counting. 7 skill levels, reinforced body, keen eyes, light step, reaction time on par with a healthy, trained athlete. Not a warrior, but not a sack of potatoes either. Maybe it was time to stop standing in the back. They found the wolves at dawn. Not 6 and not 8. 14. The creatures were black, with purple streaks running down their bodies, the size of a calf. Their eyes glowed with a murky yellow light. They reeked of something sour and sweet at the same time. Sira ordered them into formation. Marcus in front, Dirk and Rand on the flanks, Lena in the rear, Clark in the rear. The wolves attacked first. Marcus took the blow and was knocked back 3 steps. His hands were shaking. Essence flared around his fists, but dimly, unevenly. Dirk swung his sword and missed. The sword struck his palm to the left of the target. Motor skills, lack of sleep. And hurled Essence at a charging wolf. The wave of energy came out weak and scattered. Controlling Essence requires concentration, and concentration is the first thing sleep deprivation kills. After 3 minutes of fighting, it became clear. They were losing. Not because the wolves were stronger, but because the 5 people in the squad were operating at 40% of their capacity. Their bodies were strong, well-trained, but their nervous systems weren't sending clear signals. Their muscles were a split second too slow. Their eyes couldn't track quick movements. Their reactions were sluggish, like they were drunk. A wolf leaped at Lena. She screamed and stepped back. She stumbled. She fell. The wolf opened its jaws. Ethan moved before he thought. Light step, quiet breath, fortified body. 3 skills worked simultaneously. He was next to Lena in a second. He picked up a stone from the ground. He struck the wolf in the temple. Not pretty, not powerful, just precise. Well-rested motor skills, clear aim. The stone hit precisely the soft spot behind the ear. The wolf yelped, rolled back. Ethan grabbed Lena by the arm and yanked her back. Lena stared at him with wide eyes. Ethan told her to stand behind him. Then he picked up a second stone, and a third. 14 wolves, 5 exhausted fighters, and 1 well-rested guy with stones. The fight lasted another 20 minutes. Ethan didn't kill a single wolf. He lacked the strength or technique for that. But he was the only one who saw every attack, who moved without hesitation, who didn't stumble. He shouted warnings, pulled Lena out of the way of blows. Twice, he shoved Dirk aside when Dirk didn't notice a wolf behind him. Once, he threw a stone at the snout of a beast that had jumped on Sira from behind. The stone hit its eye. The wolf howled and recoiled. Sira turned around. For a second, their eyes met. Then she turned away and finished the wolf off with her sword. They had won. 14 corpses lay in the clearing. Dirk sat on the ground gasping for breath. Rand clutched his ribs. Marcus knelt with his eyes closed. Lena quietly tended to the cut on Sira's arm. Ethan was the only one standing who wasn't gasping for breath. The only one without a single scratch. Not because he was better, but because he wasn't tired. They walked back in silence, but the silence was different, heavy, thoughtful. Ethan felt eyes on the back of his neck. When they returned to the barracks, Lena approached him, quietly, almost in a whisper. She said thank you, that if it weren't for him, that wolf... She didn't finish. She just nodded and walked away. Ethan went to his room, closed the door, hung up his mask, lay down. Sleep quality 63, level 8. Progress. Slow, but steady. 3 weeks had passed since the fight with the wolves. Nothing had changed. And everything had changed. On the outside, Ethan remained the same sleepyhead. Marcus still called him a slacker. Dirk and Rand still smirked. Sira still didn't include him in battle plans. But something had shifted. Something small, imperceptible. After that fight, Marcus stopped shoving Ethan with his shoulder in the hallway. Dirk once passed him bread at the table without waiting to be asked. Rand stopped laughing at the curtains in his room. And Sira still ignored him, but now when he walked into the room, she would freeze for a second, as if she were waiting for something, and hating herself for that wait. Ethan didn't pay any attention. He was busy. Level 12. Sleep quality 67. He found honey. The Academy's medical storeroom kept jars of honey for treating wounds. Ethan explained to the medic that honey helped his digestion before bed. The medic looked at him strangely, but gave him a spoon. Warm milk with honey. Tryptophan plus fast carbs that speed up the delivery to the brain, plus 3 to quality. He found lavender. Wild lavender grew behind the Academy's south wall. Ethan gathered a bunch, dried it, placed it under his blanket. The scent of lavender lowers the heart rate by 2 beats per minute and increases the duration of the N3 phase by 8%, plus 4 to quality. Quality 71. He had reached a new threshold. The experience multiplier jumped from 1.6 to 2.1. 1 level in a night and a half. Skills were piling up. Quick feet, stone skin, animal hearing, night vision. The last skill made him laugh. Night vision, gained in a dream. Logical. Ethan's body was changing. His stomach had tightened, his arms had become sinewy, his back straightened. He hadn't worked out a single day. Sleep had done it all. N3 phase was restructuring his muscle fibers. REM was calibrating his nervous system. Every night, his body went through a microcycle of recovery and growth that would take months of training for ordinary people. But on the outside, he still looked ordinary. Not huge, not intimidating, just a normal guy. Among the emaciated skeletons, it seemed strange. Lena started approaching him more often. At first, with questions about his health. She was a healer and noticed that Ethan never came to her with complaints. Everyone else did. Marcus with muscle spasms, Dirk with migraines, Rand with nosebleeds, Sierra with nothing, but Lena had seen her pass out twice during training and refuse help. Ethan? Not once. No headaches, no spasms, no bleeding. She asked him one evening how he did it. Ethan was sitting in the common room drinking his chamomile tea. He looked at Lena, at her trembling fingers, at the dark circles under her eyes, at the way she pressed her lips together to stifle a yawn. He asked her how much sleep she got. Lena replied that she got 3 hours, sometimes 2. He asked how long it had been like that. She said since she was 12. Since then. She fell silent. Ethan didn't press her. He said he wanted to try something, if she agreed. Lena didn't know why, but she nodded. The next evening, Ethan made tea. Not his usual chamomile, something different. For her. Chamomile, valerian, honey. A drop of lavender oil squeezed from dried flowers. He called it Lena's Evening. She laughed, quietly, almost silently. He said she needed to drink it 40 minutes before bed, no later, and lie down in a dark room. Lena said she couldn't be in the dark. Ethan looked at her. She looked away. He didn't ask why. Instead, he went to his room and returned 20 minutes later. In his hands was a small object, a piece of quartz from the ruins on the outskirts of town. Ethan had spent 2 hours finding it. The quartz glowed with a soft, warm light in the darkness. Not bright, not blue, warm, like a nightlight. He placed it in front of Lena. He said it was for her, so the darkness wouldn't be empty anymore. Lena took the quartz. Her fingers stopped trembling. For a second. Just for a second. Then they trembled again, but she pressed the stone to her chest and said nothing. That night, Lena drank some tea. She lay down in her room. She placed the quartz on the nightstand next to her pillow. A soft, warm light. Not darkness, but not brightness either. She closed her eyes and fell asleep 12 minutes later. For the first time in 10 years. Without stimulants, without fear, without the nightmare of the fire in which her parents had burned to death. She just slept. In the morning, Lena came to breakfast. Everyone stopped. Dirk dropped his spoon. Marcus looked up from his porridge. Sierra froze with her mug halfway to her mouth. Lena looked different. The dark circles under her eyes hadn't vanished overnight. But her eyes were different. Bright, alive, for the first time in years. She sat down. She looked at Ethan. He was drinking his tea and didn't look up. She quietly said thank you. He nodded, nothing more. But everyone at the table saw it, and each was lost in their own thoughts. Lena began sleeping every night, 5 hours, then 6, then 7. Tea, quartz, a dark room, silence. Within 2 weeks, her fingers stopped trembling, completely. She could now apply healing techniques without faltering. The precision of her essence doubled. She began to heal faster, deeper, cleaner. Marcus came to her with a chronic spasm in his shoulder that had been tormenting him for 3 months. Lena laid her hand on him. The essence flowed smoothly, without a tremor. The spasm was gone in a minute. Marcus stared at his arm, then at Lena, then through the wall toward Ethan's room. He said nothing. He left. But that evening, he approached Ethan, sat down next to him, silently, for a long time. Then he said he had insomnia, that he hadn't slept properly in 2 years, that stimulants hardly worked anymore, that every morning he woke up and felt like he was dying. Ethan looked at him, a big, strong guy, the best fighter in the class, and his voice trembled like a child's. Ethan said he'd help. That evening, he went to see Marcus. He looked around the room. A window without curtains, a hard mattress, 3 empty stimulant vials on the table. The air was dry and hot from the brazier in the corner. Ethan said the brazier needed to be removed. Marcus said he'd freeze. Ethan said he'd bring him a warm blanket. He took the brazier away, hung a dark cloth over the window, brought some hay and stuffed a pillow, brewed some tea. Not a Lenin evening, a different one, for Marcus. Valerian with mint. Mint for his chronic nausea from stimulants. Marcus drank it. He lay down. Ethan told him to close his eyes and count his breaths. 4 on the inhale, 7-second pause, 8 on the exhale. Marcus fell asleep in 20 minutes. He woke up 7 hours later. The first thing he did was sit up on the mattress and stare at his hands for a long time. They weren't shaking. For the first time in 2 years, his hands weren't shaking. Then, that night, late, Ethan was walking down the hallway toward his room when he heard a sound, a quiet one, coming from the common room. He stopped. The sound was muffled and intermittent. Someone was crying. Ethan approached the door. He peeked inside. Sierra was sitting on the floor in the corner of the hall, commander of the Dawn Squad. Her red hair was loose. Her arms were wrapped around her knees. Her face was wet. She was crying silently. Only her shoulders were shaking. In the dim light of a single candle, she looked small. Not a commander. Not the daughter of a great general. Just a small, exhausted girl who hadn't slept properly since she was 12. Ethan stood in the doorway. A second, 2, 3. Then he turned quietly, went to his room, returned 5 minutes later. In his hands, he carried a blanket. That one, the woolen one, mended by her own hands, with dried lavender sewn into the corners, and a mug, warm milk with honey. He walked over to Sarah. She lifted her head. Her eyes were wet, angry, frightened. She opened her mouth to say something, to yell at him, to chase him away. Ethan didn't let her speak. He silently covered her with the blanket, set the mug down beside her, went to the window, lowered the curtain, returned to the candle, blowed it out. Darkness, warm, soft, smelling of lavender and milk. He left, closed the door, didn't say a word, didn't look at her. He didn't expect thanks. He went to his room and went to sleep. Sierra sat in the darkness. The blanket smelled of lavender. The milk was warm. No one ever had. No one in her entire life. Her father had taught her that sleep was death, and that the strong never closed their eyes. The instructors drilled into her that every hour of rest was an hour of shame. She hadn't slept for years because sleeping meant being weak. And then this guy, this fat sleepyhead, this slacker she'd despised from day one. He silently brought her a blanket, brought her milk, closed the curtains, blowed out the candle, and left, without asking for anything, without expecting strength in return. She lay down, pressed the blanket to her face, and fell asleep. 10 hours. She slept for 10 hours. For the first time in 8 years. Without stimulants, without nightmares about her dead father. without the fear of being weak. She just slept under a warm blanket that smelled of lavender and care. In the morning, she woke up. She saw the blanket. She touched it. She remembered the night. And something inside her snapped. It didn't break. It cracked, like ice on a river in early spring. She came down for breakfast. Ethan was sitting there drinking his tea. Sierra sat across from him. He didn't look up. She stared at him for a long time. Then she said quietly, "Clark." He looked at her. She said one word, "Thank you." Then she stood up and left. Ethan finished his tea. The system window flashed. Level 14, the second month. The Dawn Squad was changing, slowly, unnoticed by the outside world. But inside, everything was different. Lena slept 7 hours every night. Her hands no longer trembled. Essence flowed from her palms in a steady stream. Last week, she healed a broken rib in a cadet from the general stream in 4 minutes. Before, it would have taken 20. Marcus cut his stimulants in half. He slept 5 hours. His strikes became more precise, not stronger, faster. The difference was enormous. Before, he'd struck like a sledgehammer, at random. Now, every blow landed where it was meant to. In training, for the first time in 6 months, he hit the target 10 times out of 10. Dirk and Rand were holding on, for now. They hadn't asked for help, but Ethan noticed that Dirk had started extinguishing his candle an hour earlier, and Rand had stopped drinking stimulants at dinner. Small steps, imperceptible, but sure. Sarah hadn't changed. On the outside, she still got up at 4 in the morning, she still trained until midnight, she still said that sleep was for the weak. But every evening she found a mug of warm milk with honey under her door. Every evening, the curtains in her room were already drawn when she returned. Every morning she woke up not at 4, but at 6. 2 extra hours. She hated herself for them and couldn't give them up. Ethan didn't talk about it, didn't ask, he didn't comment. He just did it. Milk, curtains, lavender. Every day, without a word. His level had risen to 15. Sleep quality had stabilized at 71. To raise it higher, he needed a real mattress, not hay on a stone, a real one. Ethan went into town. Silverhold was a small town at the foot of the northern mountains. Stone houses, narrow streets, a market in the square. People looked like people everywhere. Tired, gray, with eyes that showed no sleep. Ethan found an upholsterer's workshop. An old man with wrinkled hands was sewing furniture covers. Ethan asked if he could make a mattress, stuffed with wool, firm, with stitched-off sections so the filling wouldn't shift. The old man looked at him as if he were crazy, asked why. Ethan said it was for sleeping. The old man laughed, said a warrior didn't need a soft mattress, that softness softens the spirit. Ethan said he'd pay double the price. The old man stopped laughing and named a price. Ethan paid with the pay that was due to the members of the Dawn Squad, his entire monthly pay, all of it, for a single mattress. 3 days later, the mattress was ready. Ethan dragged it into his room. He lay down. He closed his eyes. His body sank into the softness. His spine straightened. His shoulders relaxed. The pressure on his body was distributed evenly. No pain impulses from a hard surface. No micro-awakenings from an uncomfortable position. He fell asleep in 6 minutes. In the morning, the system window displayed a new number. Sleep quality, 82. Experience multiplier, 2.8. Ethan sat up on the mattress and chuckled quietly. 11 quality points from a single mattress. His entire salary. The best investment of his life. Over the next week, he gained 3 levels, 15, 16, 17, 18. His skills became more advanced, steel muscles, essence conduit, second wind. The conductor meant that his body had begun to let essence flow through it. Not generate it like normal warriors do, let it flow. He felt it while he slept, a warm stream through his chest, through his arms, through his spine. Every night, the essence washed through his channels, expanding them, cleansing them. By the time he reached level 18, his body was conducting the essence more purely than that of level 30 fighters. Because their channels were clogged with waste from stimulants and overexertion, and his were clean, washed by sleep, like new. Lena noticed this. She was conducting the squad's weekly checkup. When she placed her hand on Ethan's chest and released diagnostic essence, she froze. She looked at him. Her eyes widened. She said that his channels, that they were like a child's, clean, without a single blockage. It was impossible. Ethan shrugged. He said he just slept well. Lena didn't believe him, but she remembered. Meanwhile, the world outside the academy walls continued to crumble. The tide of the distortion grew stronger with each passing week. The creatures grew larger, more aggressive. 3 detachments from other academies were completely wiped out. 24 hardened died defending the northern pass, not from weakness, from exhaustion. The reports were identical. The fighters engaged the creatures. They held out for the first 2 hours. By the 3rd hour, they began to lose coordination. By the 4th, they were falling. The creatures finished them off while they slept. Because they fell asleep right in the middle of battle, their bodies simply shut down. Chronic sleep deprivation, accumulated over the years, came crashing down at the most critical moment. The nervous system couldn't withstand the combat stress on top of years of exhaustion and forcibly shut down the body. Ethan listened to these reports at general meetings and shook his head. It was all obvious, blindingly, painfully obvious. These people weren't dying from monsters. They were dying from insomnia. Their own regime was killing them, and no one saw it. Because in Erden, sleep was the enemy. That's what they'd been taught for 1,000 years. That's what everyone believed, from peasant to king. Great masters boasted that they hadn't slept for weeks. Admirals wore their dark circles under their eyes like medals of honor. An entire civilization went into battle exhausted to the point of death, literally to the death. Ethan understood that he alone could not change the world, but he could change 6 people, his squad. A start. One evening after dinner, he gathered everyone in the common hall. Sierra, Marcus, Dirk, Rand, Lena. 5 pairs of eyes stared at him, some with interest, some with irritation. Ethan said he wanted to propose an experiment. 1 week, everyone in the squad would sleep for at least 6 hours. Training sessions would be cut by 3 hours. Chamomile tea instead of stimulants before bed. Dark rooms. Silence. If their combat performance dropped after a week, he would fall silent forever. If it improved, they would continue. Silence. Marcus looked at his hands. They hadn't been shaking for 2 weeks. Lena pressed her steady fingers against her knees. Dirk exchanged a glance with Rand. Sierra was silent. For a long time. A very long time. Then she said 1 week. If the numbers drop, Clark leaves the unit. Ethan nodded. That night he went around all the rooms, hung curtains, placed lavender around, brewed 5 different teas. For Lena with chamomile and honey, for Marcus with valerian and mint, for Dirk with lemon balm, for Rand with motherwort, for Sierra with milk and cinnamon because he'd noticed she liked cinnamon. No one saw him doing this. He finished at midnight. He lay down on his new mattress. Sleep quality 82, multiplier 2.8, level 18. The system ran quietly while he slept. The experiment began in the morning, the week that would decide everything. The first day of the experiment was tough. The habit of not sleeping is stronger than any workout. Marcus went to bed at 10 p.m. and tossed and turned for 2 hours. Dirk fell asleep quickly, but woke up at 2 a.m. and couldn't fall back asleep until dawn. Rand fell asleep normally, but woke up at 4 out of habit and couldn't get back to sleep. Lena slept well. She had already gotten used to it over the past month. Sierra went to bed at 11. Milk with cinnamon sat on the nightstand. The blanket smelled of lavender. She closed her eyes and lay there until 3 in the morning, with her heart pounding wildly. Her body didn't know how to sleep. It had forgotten how over the past 8 years. Her nervous system was so wound up that relaxation felt like a threat. Ethan knew it would be like this. It's called paradoxical insomnia. The body is so tired that it can't fall asleep from exhaustion. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes one night at a time, one by one. Day 2. Marcus slept for 4 hours. Not much, but it was quality sleep. His shot in practice was 12% more accurate than yesterday. Ethan recorded the numbers. He sat at the edge of the court with a notebook and jotted down everyone's results. Day 3. Dirk slept for 5 hours. His reaction time to the practice targets improved by 8%. Day 4. Rand slept 6 hours for the first time in a year. His essence during morning meditation was denser than usual. He could feel it himself. He approached Ethan after practice and said he didn't know what was happening, but that the energy was flowing more smoothly. Day 5. Marcus slept for 6 hours. In the morning, he went out to train and knocked a training pole out of its stone base with a single blow. The pole weighed 200 kilograms. Marcus stood and looked at the debris, then at his hands. Then he turned to Ethan, who was sitting with a notebook. He said nothing, but there was something new in his eyes. Not respect, not yet. Amazement. Day 6. Sarah slept for 7 hours. For the first time in the week-long experiment. Before that, the maximum had been 4. That night, the paradoxical insomnia finally receded. Her body gave in. The nervous system, which had been working itself to the bone for 8 years, received a signal that it was okay, that it was safe. Milk, lavender, a blanket, silence. It was okay. In the morning, Sierra went out onto the training ground. She picked up her sword. She began her form. And everyone stopped. Because Sierra Venholt moved like water, not like usual. Usually she was sharp, precise, rigid, strong. But today her sword flowed. Every movement flowed into the next without a pause, without a jerk, without a micro-hesitation. For 8 years, she had fought with a body that functioned at 60%. Her nervous system missed every third signal from her brain to her muscles. She compensated for this with brute strength and willpower. Today, the signals were clear, for the first time. And it turned out that Sierra Venholt was more talented than anyone had thought, including herself. She finished the form, lowered her sword, standing there, breathing. Her eyes were wet, but her face was calm. Day 7. Ethan gathered the squad. He laid out his notebook with the records. The numbers were clear. Average strike accuracy had increased by 23%, reaction speed by 18%, essence density during meditation by 31%. Endurance in sparring had doubled. 0 injuries for the week. The usual norm for the squad was 3 to 4 injuries a week. 0. Because the coordination of well-rested bodies did not allow for mistakes leading to injuries. Sarah looked at the numbers. Silently. Then she looked up at Ethan. He was waiting. She said the experiment was continuing, indefinitely. Ethan nodded and went to sleep, because he needed to gain 2 more levels to reach level 20. And for that, he needed one more good night's sleep. A month had passed since the start of the experiment. The Zarya squad slept every night, 6 hours minimum. For the world of Erdan, this was heresy. For the squad, it had become the norm. And the results spoke louder than any words. At the monthly tournament between the elite squads of the Silverhold Academy, Zarya took first place. For the first time in 2 years, Marcus made it through 4 rounds without taking a single hit. His opponents missed because Marcus saw every move half a second earlier. A sharp nervous system, rapid processing of visual information, simple biology. Dirk and Rand worked together so seamlessly that the referees stopped their final match early. Their opponents simply couldn't break through their coordination. The two moved as a single organism. That's impossible without deep sleep. The REM phase synchronizes motor memory. People who sleep together train better than those who train together but sleep apart. Ethan knew this from studies of basketball teams in his world. Lena didn't fight. She stood in the rear and healed. But her healing was so fast and precise that the Academy's chief healer approached her after the tournament and asked what she had done to her hands. Lena smiled and said she was just getting a good night's sleep. The healer didn't understand. Sira fought in the final round against the commander of the Thunder Squad. The guy's named Victor Stein. Broad, heavy, a third-rank hardened fighter. He hadn't slept for 2 days before the tournament because he'd been training at night. He was proud of it. The fight lasted 11 seconds. Sira struck 3 times. Victor didn't see a single blow. He fell. Not because Sira was stronger, but because she was faster, more precise, more focused. Her body was operating at 95% capacity for the first time in her life. Victor was operating at 40, just like everyone else in this world. After the tournament, rumors began to spread throughout the academy. The Dawn Squad was taking something, a new potion, a banned alchemical compound. How else to explain that a group that had been mediocre for 2 years suddenly started beating everyone in a row? Ethan heard these rumors and smirked. A potion. Yeah, it's called sleep. 8 hours. For free. But his smirk didn't last long, because the rumors reached people who shouldn't have heard them. 3 days after the tournament, Ethan was summoned to the rector's office. The dean's office was on the top floor of the main tower, large, dark, dusty. Dean Aldenmark sat at the desk, elderly, gaunt, with eyes that never blinked. Rumor had it he hadn't slept in 20 years. Stimulants flowed through his blood like water. Standing next to the rector was a man Ethan had never seen before. Tall, very thin, a face like parchment stretched over a skull, deep-set eyes, a white robe with a golden symbol on the chest, an open eye crossed by a horizontal line, the symbol of the Order of the Watchers. The rector said that this was the Supreme Inquisitor of the Order of the Watchers, Brother Silas Morn. He was here on behalf of the capital. Silas Morn looked at Ethan. His gaze was like the touch of an icy needle. He said that the Order was concerned about rumors from the Silverhold Academy, that a certain cadet was spreading the idea among the warriors that sleep is beneficial, that this directly contradicts the doctrine of vigilance adopted by the Kingdom of Havenrich 400 years ago, that encouraging sleep is a form of undermining morale and is tantamount to treason. Ethan listened and felt a chill run down his spine. Treason for teaching people to sleep. Silas continued. He said that for now this was only an investigation, that if Cadet Clark ceased his activities and returned to the standard training regimen, the case would be closed. If not, Silas didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Ethan looked at the dean. The dean was staring at the table. His trembling hands rested on his knees. This man knew Ethan was right. He had seen the tournament results. He knew the numbers. But he was afraid. The whole world was afraid. 400 years of doctrine, 1,000 years of the cult of wakefulness. You can't just tell people that everything they believed in was a lie. Ethan left the office. He stood in the hallway, leaned against the wall, closed his eyes. His pulse was racing. Stress. Stress is the enemy of sleep. Cortisol blocks melatonin. Anxiety destroys the N3 phase. If he didn't calm down, tonight would be lost. And a lost night means a lost level, and a lost level means weakness. And weakness right now means death. Ethan did the 4-7-8 breath, 3 cycles. His pulse dropped. His shoulders relaxed. He opened his eyes. All right. The Order of the Watchers, fanatics who consider sleep heresy. They know about him. That's bad, very bad. But he has a squad. He has levels. He has time. For now. He returned to the barracks and told Sira everything. She listened in silence. Her face was stony. Then she asked what he was going to do. Ethan said he was going to continue. Sira looked at him for a long time. Then she said that the Dawn Squad didn't answer to the Order of the Watchers, that they answered only to the Academy Command, and that unless the Rector gave a direct order to stop, they would continue. Ethan asked what if he did. Sira replied that then they would sleep in secret. Ethan looked at her. Sira Venholt, the girl who a month ago had despised him for his laziness, who had considered sleep a disgrace, who had cried from exhaustion in the corner of the barracks. Now she was saying she would break the law to sleep. Something had broken in this world. Or perhaps something had finally been fixed. That night, Ethan slept poorly. Quality 54. The stress from his encounter with Silas had finally gotten to him. The system window showed a reduced multiplier, 1.7 instead of 2.8. He had lost nearly half his nightly progress. It reminded him of his main limitation. His power depended on peace, not physical, emotional. Fear killed his progress just as surely as a sword. Stress was his true enemy, not monsters, not fanatics. Stress. He needed to learn to be calm, truly calm, even when the world is burning, especially when the world is burning. The next day, Ethan began practicing evening meditation, not for the essence, for his mind. 20 minutes before bed, breathing, relaxing his muscles from his toes to the top of his head, visualizing a safe place. He pictured his basement at his mother's house, an old couch, the warm glow of the monitor, the smell of pizza, the silence of the house at night. Everything he hated about his past life here became his anchor, his safe place. 3 days later, his sleep quality returned to 82. The stress receded. Level 20. The threshold. The system window flashed brighter than usual. New ability unlocked. Ethan read the description. Short recovery sleep. A 20-minute nap restores 15% of nighttime progress. Available once per day. Power nap. Ethan smiled. 20 minutes of daytime sleep granted experience. Not much, but in the field, between battles, on the road, it changed everything. He was no longer tied only to the night. He could grow during the day, little by little, but he could. Ethan lay down on the mattress in the middle of the day, closed his eyes. Mask, silence. 4-7-8 breathing. 6 minutes, sleep. Exactly 20 minutes. He woke up on his own. The system window confirmed it. 15% of nighttime progress credited. A small amount, but in a world where every percentage point counts, it was a weapon. That evening at dinner, Ethan noticed that Lena was sitting quieter than usual, not eating, staring at the table. He sat down next to her. He asked what was wrong. She was silent for a long time. Then she said she'd heard about the order, that they'd come because of him, that if they took Ethan, she'd stop sleeping again, that she couldn't go back. She couldn't go back to the way things were. Her voice didn't tremble, her hands didn't shake, but her eyes were filled with such quiet terror that Ethan felt his throat tighten. He said he wasn't going anywhere, that he'd taught her everything he knew, that she could make her own tea, that she had the quartz, that her sleep now belonged to her, not to him. Lena looked up. She looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded, and for the first time that evening, she smiled. Ethan went back into the room. He lay down. The mattress, the curtain, lavender, the mask, silence. Milk. Breathing. Sleep. Quality 84. A new record. 2 points had been added, and Ethan didn't immediately realize where they came from. Then he understood. Calm. The conversation with Lena had dispelled the lingering anxiety. Caring for others calmed him better than any meditation. He fell asleep with a light heart. The system window worked quietly in the darkness. Level 21, multiplier 2.9. Somewhere in the capital of Havenrich, Chief Investigator Silas Morn was writing a report for the Magister of the Order of the Watchers. The report contained one name, Ethan Clark, and one recommendation, observe, for now. The 4th month, night. Ethan was asleep. Quality 84, level 24. Mattress, curtain, lavender, mask, silence. Everything was perfect. His body drifted in N3 sleep. His muscles were reorganizing. The essence channels were expanding. The system window quietly tallied his experience. He didn't hear the door open. He didn't feel the draft. He didn't sense a stranger's presence. Because he was asleep. And in his sleep, he was defenseless. Completely defenseless. The blade stopped 3 centimeters from his throat. Lena was sitting on a chair by the door. She hadn't slept that night, not because insomnia had returned, but because of feeling. Something. A formless anxiety. A healer's 6th sense, trained to sense another's pain. She was sitting by Ethan's door because she couldn't explain to herself why, but she couldn't leave. When a shadow slipped down the hallway, Lena saw it. A small figure in black. Silent. Swift. It opened Ethan's door without a sound. It entered. Lena stood up. Her hands glowed. Healing essence isn't meant for combat. But Lena knew one thing. Nerve centers. She knew every nerve center in the human body. She struck the assassin at the point below the shoulder blade. Not hard, but precisely. The hand holding the blade twitched. It went numb. The blade fell to the floor with a clang. The assassin spun around. Lena saw the face. Young, female, fanatical eyes. The symbol of the Order of the Watchers tattooed on her temple. The assassin kicked Lena in the chest. Lena flew into the wall. Her back exploded with pain. But she didn't scream. Instead, she shouted Ethan's name. Ethan woke up, instantly. Not because he was a trained warrior, but because his sleep phase had been interrupted at the border between N3 and REM. Waking up from that point is the most abrupt. The brain fires up in a second and a half. He saw the assassin. He saw Lena against the wall. He saw the blade on the floor. The assassin leaped at him with her bare hands. Her fingers glowed with black essence, a technique of the order. The touch of death. A single touch of the skin, and the heart stops. Ethan rolled off the mattress. The assassin's fingers pierced the pillow. Feathers flew into the air. He grabbed the blanket and threw it in her face. She was momentarily disoriented. For a single second. Ethan punched her in the solar plexus. Skill, steel muscles. Skill, fortified body, level 24. The blow wasn't pretty, not technical, but powerful. The assassin doubled over. Ethan grabbed her by the head and struck her in the face with his knee. She fell. She didn't move. Ethan stood over her, breathing heavily. His hands were shaking, not from weakness, from adrenaline. Lena ran over. Her hands were glowing. She checked the assassin. Alive, unconscious, broken nose, concussion. A minute later, Sierra burst into the room, sword drawn. Behind her were Marcus, Dirk, Rand, all in their underwear, all armed. Sierra saw the assassin on the floor, Lena with a broken back, Ethan in a torn nightshirt, feathers from the pillow on the floor. She lowered her sword. She looked at Ethan. He said that the Order of the Watchers had sent the killer, that Lena had saved his life, that he needed a new pillow. Sierra didn't smile. Her face was white with rage. She said that starting tonight, Ethan would have guards, that they would take turns on duty every night. While he slept, someone from the squad would sit by the door. Ethan started to object. Sierra cut him off. She said it wasn't up for discussion, that he sleeps and they guard him. That's his job and their job. Marcus nodded. Dirk nodded. Rand nodded. Lena smiled through the pain in her back. Ethan looked at them. 5 people willing to stay awake so he could sleep. The irony was so bitter and warm at the same time that he didn't know what to say. He said thank you, and asked the guard on duty to be quiet because noise reduces the quality of sleep. Marcus snorted, almost a laugh. Almost. The assassin had been handed over to the academy guards. Rector Aldenmark was furious, not at the order, at the fact that the incident had occurred within his walls. He summoned Ethan and said he couldn't protect him from the order, that he recommended he stop. Ethan replied that he couldn't stop sleeping, that it was literally impossible. The rector rubbed his temples with trembling fingers and told Ethan to do as he pleased, but not to complain when the next ones came. The next ones. Plural. Ethan went out and sat on the back of the tower. The sun warmed his face. He thought, the order needs to kill him in his sleep. That's the only time he's vulnerable. So he needs to make his sleep invulnerable. Guards are good, but 5 people can't stand watch every night forever. They need to sleep too. He needed a system. Room security, locks, traps, an alarm. He had to turn his bedroom into a fortress. He spent the next 3 days working, not on sleep, on construction. A new lock on the door, heavy, iron, bought from a blacksmith with the rest of his pay. A rope with bells stretched across the hallway in front of the door. Anyone who walks by will set it off. The ringing will wake the guard on duty. A wooden beam under the door handle from the inside. Even if the lock is picked, the door won't open. The window, 3rd floor. Can't climb up from below without equipment, but just in case, he hammered nails point up into the windowsill. Simple, rough, effective. Lena helped. She cast a light healing spell on the door. Not a combat spell, diagnostic. If a person with a rapid pulse and adrenaline in their blood appeared near the door, the seal would begin to glow faintly. Not perfect protection, but enough for the guard on duty to notice. Ethan surveyed the room. The lock, the beam, the bells, the nails, the seal, the curtain, the mattress, lavender, a mask, milk, deep sleep. He lay down, closed his eyes. Sierra was sitting behind the door. She'd taken the first watch. Ethan heard her settle into the chair, quietly, just as he'd asked. He fell asleep in 8 minutes. Sleep quality 79, 5 points below normal. Residual stress from the attack, but tolerable. Multiplier 2.5, level 25 by morning. New skill, light sleep. The description stated that Ethan could now wake up at the slightest threat within a 5-meter radius during the light sleep phase, not during deep sleep, only in light sleep. This meant that in the N1 phase, on the border between falling asleep and waking up, his body functioned as a motion sensor. Any hostile intent nearby and he would wake up. The system compensated for his vulnerability, not completely, but partially. Deep sleep remained dangerous, but falling asleep and waking up became safer. The days went on. The security detail was on duty. Every night, someone sat by the door. Sierra, Marcus, Dirk, Rand, Lena, in turns. Ethan drew up a schedule so that each guard would lose as little sleep as possible. A shift from 10 to 2 in the morning. Then the guard would go to sleep, and Ethan would enter a phase of light sleep until morning and could respond to a threat himself thanks to his skill. 4 hours of guard duty, 6 hours of sleep for the guard. A compromise. Not perfect, but it worked. The squad got used to it. It became a ritual. Evening tea, watch duty, sleep, morning, training. They were a strange family. 5 warriors who guarded the 6th's sleep so that the 6th could make them stronger. Ethan reached level 27 by the end of the 4th month. Skills accumulated. 2nd rank Stone Skin, accelerated regeneration, Essence Shield. His body had become sturdy. Not huge, not muscular like Marcus's, but dense, vein-covered. His skin had grown tougher, his fists heavier. He could withstand a flat blow from a sword without a bruise. He could run for half an hour without getting out of breath. He could see in the dark like a cat. All from sleep. All from the mattress and the curtains and the lavender and the milk. He didn't need a sword. He didn't need technique. His weapon was recovery. His strength was peace. And with every night, he became more dangerous. The 5th month. The alarm sounded at dawn. The horn blared from the northern wall of Silverhold so loudly that the windows in the barracks rattled. A tide of the warp. Not a scouting pack, not a dozen wolves. A full-scale wave. Hundreds of creatures emerged from the mountain gorge and moved toward the city. Black figures with purple veins. Wolves, horned beasts, crawlers, and 3 massive creatures no one had ever seen before. Huge, the size of a house, with carapaces covered in pulsing veins of the corruption. The Silverhold Guard mobilized all available forces, 6 academy squads, the city guard, 24 hardened from the garrison, 300 fighters against hundreds of creatures. On paper, the odds were even. In reality, they weren't. Ethan stood on the wall and looked at the army of defenders. 300 men. And every one of them had dark circles under their eyes. Every one of them had trembling hands. None of them had slept properly in years. They were strong, trained, hardened, and exhausted to the bone. The battle began at 7 in the morning. The first hour went smoothly. The essence sparkled, swords slashed, the creatures fell. The defenders held the line. The second hour, the pace began to slow. The strikes lost their accuracy. Feet began to stumble. Someone on the left flank fell. Not from a blow, from exhaustion. His body simply shut down. The creature finished him off in a second. The third hour, the line began to break. The hardened soldiers from the garrison fought blindly. Their eyes couldn't focus. Their hands moved on autopilot. But memory and reality diverged by half a second. That half second was enough for the creatures. People were falling. 1, 2, 5, 10. Exhaustion was killing them, or rather, the fangs. The Zarya squad stood in reserve until the third hour. Sarah received an order from the commandant to close the breach on the right flank where the Berry squad had been completely wiped out. 6 had died in 20 minutes. Not from weakness, because the squad commander had fallen asleep standing up 4 minutes into the battle, and a creature tore his head off. After that, the formation fell apart. Sarah led the squad to their position, Marcus in front, Dirk and Rand on the flanks, Lena in the rear. Ethan. Ethan next to Lena, not behind her, next to her. There were about 30 creatures in their sector, wolves and horned beasts. Not a single large one. Marcus crashed into the pack like a hammer, his fists burned with essence, dense, bright. Every blow landed precisely. No wasted movements, no misses. His well-rested body worked like a machine. Dirk and Rand moved in sync. One slashed, the other covered. No words, no commands. Their motor memory, synchronized by weeks of shared sleep, operated on instinct. Lena healed, quickly, precisely. Her hands glowed with an even light. Every cut closed in seconds. Every wound disappeared on the spot. She didn't flinch. Sira commanded and fought at the same time. Her sword moved like water. 3 wolves leaped at her at once. She killed all 3 with a single sweeping strike. Pure neural conduction, instant reaction. Not a single delay between thought and movement. In 30 minutes, the Zarya squad had destroyed 30 beasts. Not a single casualty. No serious injuries. Dirk got a scratch on his forearm. Lena healed it in 3 seconds. By the 4th hour of the battle, 3 large creatures had broken through the central line. 2 Academy squads were crushed in minutes. The hardened garrison soldiers rushed to intercept them. 5 against 1 large creature. They fought for 10 minutes. All 5 fell. Alive, but unconscious. Their bodies had shut down. Years of sleep deprivation had caught up with them at the moment of maximum stress. Their nervous systems had said, enough, and pulled the plug. The commandant gave the order to retreat, the 3rd horn signal. General retreat behind the 2nd wall. The defenders ran. Some fell while running. They passed out. Comrades dragged them by the shoulders. There were still many of the creatures. 2 large beings were heading toward the gates. 1 had been killed by the hardened at the cost of the entire squad. The 2 remaining were unharmed. Zarya's squad retreated last. Sarah didn't want to leave. Ethan saw her clench her teeth as she watched the creatures surging toward the city. She wanted to fight. Every cell in her body wanted to fight. But she was the commander, and the commander knew that 6 of them wouldn't stop 2 armored giants. They retreated behind the 2nd wall. Lena worked without stopping, treating the wounded, one after another. Her hands glowed so brightly it hurt to look at them. She didn't tire. 8 hours of quality sleep every night gave her a reserve of essence that lasted for hours of continuous work. Other healers collapsed after 20 minutes. Lena had been working for 4 hours, and she kept going. Ethan stood beside her, handing her bandages. Not heroic, not epic, just handing out bandages and bringing water. Amid the wounded, he found 20 minutes. He sat down, leaned against the wall, put on his mask, breathing 4, 7, 8. Fell asleep in 4 minutes. Power nap. 20 minutes. Woke up. System window. 15% of nightly progress credited. Experience gained. The wounded soldier next to him stared at him with his mouth agape. Ethan had just slept in the middle of the battle. Amidst the blood and screams, he slept. 20 minutes. And he stood up feeling fresher than everyone around him. The battle lasted until evening. 2 large creatures were smashing against the 2nd wall. The defenders were holding on with their last ounce of strength. People were falling asleep on their feet and were being woken up with slaps. The stimulants ran out by noon. The alchemists were brewing new batches but couldn't keep up. By sunset, one of the massive creatures had breached the gate. Beyond it lay a square. Beyond the square, residential districts, thousands of people. The commandant ordered the last reserve to close the breach. The last reserve was the Zarya squad, 6 of them, against an armored giant the size of a house. Sarah looked at the squad. Marcus clenched his fists. Dirk and Rand exchanged glances. Lena paled, but nodded. Ethan. Ethan yawned. Everyone looked at him. He said he'd lost 40 minutes of sleep that morning because of the alarm, and that it annoyed him more than the giant creature. Marcus snorted. This time, it was real laughter. Brief, but real. They stepped out into the square. The creature stood in the breach in the wall. Black, massive. Its armor pulsed purple. Its eyes burned a murky yellow. It was tired. Ethan could see it. The creature had been fighting all day. Its movements had slowed. The purple veins were duller. Even the creatures of the distortion get tired. Even they aren't infinite. Sira gave the order. Marcus to the front, distracted. Dirk and Rand on the flanks, look for a weak spot in the armor. Lena, heals on the fly. Clark. She looked at Ethan. He nodded. For the first time, she didn't say he should stay in the back. She said he should look for an opening. Ethan understood. Marcus struck first. His fist slammed into the armor. The creature flinched. Not from the force of the blow, from the precision. Marcus struck at the seam between the plates, where the armor was thinner. Well-rested eyes could see such details. Sleep-deprived ones could not. Dirk slashed with his sword on the right side, Rand on the left. The creature writhed. It roared. It lashed out with its tail. Heavy, stone-hard. A single blow from that tail would have killed on the spot. But Dirk and Rand dodged, every time, without panic, without fuss. Their bodies reacted faster than the creature's bodies, because a human nervous system operating at full capacity is faster than a distortion creature's nervous system operating on fumes. Lena ran between them. She treated every bruise, every scrape. She didn't let fatigue build up. Sarah coordinated. Her voice was calm and clear. Not a single unnecessary command, not a single repetition. A brain operating at full capacity after 7 hours of sleep delivered decisions with the precision of a machine. Ethan walked around the fight. He watched. He waited. The creature was weakening. Its movements became jerky. The armor on its right side cracked from Dirk's blows. Purple veins flashed. It was tired. It wanted to stop. It couldn't. The distortion drove it forward, just as stimulants drove people. Ethan saw his moment. The creature froze for half a second, a micro pause. Its body tried to shut down, and the distortion yanked it back. In that instant, the armor on its neck opened slightly, a gap the width of a palm. Ethan leaped. Skill, light step, the accelerated regeneration skill, the steel muscles skill, level 27 of raw power earned in sleep. He punched the gap in the armor. The essence flowed through his hand, pure, bright, washed clean by nights of deep sleep. It entered the creature's body like a needle in water. The creature roared. Ethan didn't let go. He pumped the essence through the crack. Not combat essence. He didn't know combat techniques. He pumped his own essence. The essence of peace. The essence of restoration. The creature's body trembled. Veins of distortion flickered and faded. The creature sank to its knees, slowly, heavily, like a man who finally allowed himself to sit down after days on his feet. Its eyes dimmed. They did not go out, dulled. It fell asleep, in the middle of a ruined wall, in the middle of the battle. A huge black creature the size of a house lay on its side and closed its eyes. Ethan stood nearby. His hand still rested on the shell. He was breathing heavily. His hand ached. But the creature slept, and the distortion inside it was fading with every second of sleep. Silence. The square was silent. Hundreds of eyes watched the sleeping monster and the boy standing next to it. The boy who had put it to sleep. Sira approached. She lowered her sword. She looked at Ethan. She looked at the creature. Then back at Ethan. She didn't say anything. But for the first time in the 5 months they'd known each other, Ethan saw something in her eyes other than respect and anger. He saw fear. Not for herself, for him. Because the whole city had seen what he'd just done, and so had the Order of the Watchers. After the battle for Silverhold, everything had changed. The city had held out. The second large creature had retreated back into the mountains when the wave of the warp receded at sunset. The losses were heavy. 42 fighters were killed, over 100 wounded. 3 academy squads were completely wiped out. But the city stood, and everyone knew who had closed the breach. Within 2 days, the name Ethan Clark was known to every resident of Silverhold. The guy who put the creature to sleep. The guy who sleeps instead of training and is still stronger than the hardened. The guy from the squad Dawn who fought all day and never got tired. Rumors spread quickly. They grew with details. Someone said that Ethan wielded ancient magic. Some whispered that he was a demon who had taken human form. Some claimed that the Order was right and that sleep was heresy, and Ethan its conduit. But many said otherwise, quietly, among themselves, behind closed doors. They said that maybe it was worth a try. Maybe sleep wasn't a weakness. Maybe. People began arriving at the barracks of the Dawn Squad. The first to arrive was a young guard named Owen, 23 years old, 7 years on the wall. He hadn't slept properly since he was 16. His hands shook so much he couldn't hold a bow. On the wall, that meant death. He came to Ethan in the evening. He stood in the doorway, crumpling his cap in his hands. He said he'd heard, that he wanted to try, that he had nothing to lose. Ethan looked at his hands, at the ticks on his face, at the bags under his eyes. Classic stage 4. Another 6 months and the micropsychoses would start. He told Owen to come back tomorrow, with a mattress. Owen left. The next day he came back, with a straw mattress under his arm. Ethan inspected his room in the guard barracks. Same story. With light, noise, cold, stimulants on the table. Ethan spent 2 hours rearranging the room. Curtains, hay in the mattress, lavender, tea. He explained the 4-7-8 breathing technique. Owen tried it. He fell asleep in 30 minutes. For a man who hadn't slept normally in 7 years, it was a miracle. 3 days later, Owen slept for his first 6 hours. A week later, his hands stopped shaking. He came to Ethan and silently hugged him. Ethan stood there, not knowing where to put his hands. He wasn't used to hugs. In his past life, only his mother had ever hugged him. A blacksmith came for Owen, then a baker, then 3 soldiers, then a healer from the city clinic, then more, and more. In 2 weeks, 20 people had come to Ethan. He couldn't keep up. Everyone needed an individual approach. Everyone had their own reasons for insomnia, their own fears, their own habits. One couldn't sleep because of chronic back pain, another because of nightmares, a third because of anxiety over his family on the farm north of town. Ethan remembered the principle. No one-size-fits-all solution, a targeted approach. To each his own. To each his own tea, his own pillow, his own ritual. But 20 people meant 20 different problems, and he was alone. So he called Minnie Hale, a petite 17-year-old girl in a stained apron. She wasn't part of the Dawn Squad. She wasn't a fighter at all. She was an alchemist, a former alchemist of the Guild. Ethan knew about her because Lena had told him. Minnie had run away from the Alchemists Guild 3 months ago. She'd ended up at the academy. She lived in the infirmary's back room. She helped brew ointments. Quiet, bespectacled, with dirty hands and guilty eyes. Ethan found her in the back room. She was sitting over a cauldron, stirring something green. She saw him and flinched. Ethan sat down next to her. He said he needed help. She asked what kind. He said he needed an alchemist who knew how to make potions, but not stimulants, not poisons, not combat concoctions. Sleeping potions. Real ones. No side effects, no addiction, no damage to the nervous system. Minnie looked at him silently. Her eyes behind the thick lenses of her glasses were enormous. Ethan began to explain. Melatonin, a substance produced in the brain when darkness falls. It triggers drowsiness. In this world, no one knew about it, but it must exist in plants. Valerian contains substances with similar effects. Chamomile, too. Passion flower, if it grows here. Lavender works through the sense of smell. Magnesium through muscle relaxation. And Ethan spoke for half an hour. Minnie listened without blinking. Then she took out a notebook and began writing, quickly, in small handwriting, page after page. She asked about proportions, dosages, interactions. Ethan answered. Not everything. He wasn't a pharmacist. He was a dropout from the somnology department. But he knew the basics. And Minnie was a genius, a true genius. She would hear a description of a substance's effects and immediately suggest a local equivalent. Ethan talked about magnesium. Minnie said that in the caves south of the city there was a white mineral that farmers put in water for cramps, most likely magnesite. Ethan talked about tryptophan. Minnie said that night lotus seeds contain a substance that makes you want to sleep. Monks in Eastern temples use them for meditation. In 3 days, Minnie created the first potion. A small vial with a pale blue liquid. It had a slightly sweet smell. Ethan tested it on himself. He drank it 40 minutes before bed. He fell asleep in 4 minutes. His sleep quality jumped to 88, a record, an absolute record. He woke up and almost cried. The system window showed a multiplier of 3.2, level 29. 3 levels in 1 night. Minnie was standing by the door in the morning, waiting for the result. Ethan gave her a thumbs up. She smiled. For the first time in all the time he'd known her. Wide, childlike, with a pride that no one had ever let her feel before. She was an alchemist. Her whole life she had brewed potions that killed people slowly, stimulants that destroyed the nervous system, combat concoctions that burned the channels of essence. She knew her hands were stained with blood, silent, invisible blood. And now she had brewed a potion that simply helped a person sleep well. A potion that healed rather than maimed. She found her redemption in a small vial of pale blue liquid. Ethan gave her a room in the Dawn Squad barracks, unofficially. Minnie wasn't a fighter and couldn't be a member of the elite squad. But Sira looked at the vial. She tasted it. She slept for 9 hours and woke up looking as if she were seeing the dawn for the first time. After that, Sira said that Minnie could live wherever she wanted. Minnie began producing the potions in batches, small ones, 10 vials at a time. The ingredients were cheap. Chamomile grew right outside the wall. White stone cost next to nothing. Night lotus seeds were sold at the market as a spice. Lavender was free. The cost of a single vial was 40 times lower than a single dose of the guild's stimulant. 40 times. Ethan handed out the potions to those who came seeking help. For free. Owen, the blacksmith, the baker, the soldiers, the healer. Everyone received their vial and instructions. Curtains. Silence. Tea. Breathing. The potion 40 minutes before bed. The results were the same. People fell asleep. People slept soundly. People woke up with teary eyes and said they couldn't remember the last time they'd felt this way. One phrase was repeated over and over. Different people, different voices, one phrase. I didn't know it was possible to live like this. Ethan heard that phrase 20 times in 2 weeks. Every time something tightened in his chest. In his own world, he was a nobody, a nerd in the basement, a dropout, a loser. Here, he gave people something they'd never had their whole lives, a normal sleep. And they cried because of it. Level 30, quality 88, multiplier 3.2. Skills were leveling up faster. Third rank steel muscles. Second rank essence conduit. Regeneration while sleeping. The last skill was new. Any wounds sustained during the day healed at night while he slept. Cuts in 1 night, broken bones in 2 or 3. Ethan was becoming resilient. Not invincible, resilient. During the day, he could be wounded, but at night, his body repaired itself, just like in a video game. Only the save point was a soft pillow. News of Minnie's potions reached the Alchemists Guild within 3 weeks. The guild was not pleased. Stimulants were their main commodity. Every warrior in Havenrich bought stimulants. Every soldier, every guard, every cadet. The stimulant market had sustained the guild for centuries, and now some defector girl is brewing sleep potions, cheap, effective, free. If this spreads, the market will collapse. The guild won't let that happen. A week after Minnie started brewing the potions, Ethan woke up in the morning with a headache. A strange one. A dull one. Not like his usual headaches. His system window showed a sleep quality of 61, a drop of 27 points. He checked the room. The curtains were in place, the mattress was fine, the lavender was fresh, the mask was clean. Milk. He sniffed the mug he'd drunk from the night before. The milk smelled normal, but something was off. He called Minnie. She came. She sniffed the mug, tasted a drop. Her expression changed. She said there was an additive in the milk, night-blooming jasmine, a plant that blocks the production of natural melatonin, used in the guild's laboratories to test stimulants. Someone had slipped him a sleep-inducing agent. Someone from the kitchen, or someone who had access to his room. The Alchemists Guild had begun the hunt, not for his life, for his sleep. They couldn't kill him openly, but they could deprive him of his greatest weapon. If Ethan doesn't sleep, he doesn't grow. If he doesn't grow, he weakens. If he weakens, he dies. A simple chain, elegant, deadly. Ethan stood in his room and looked at the mug of poisoned milk. The Order wanted to kill him in his sleep. The Guild wanted to keep him from sleeping. 2 enemies, 2 ways to destroy the same thing, his sleep. He set the mug down on the table. He turned to Minnie. He told her that starting today, she would check all his food and drink, every evening. No exceptions. Minnie nodded. Seriously, like a grown-up. She said she would find a way to detect any contamination, that she had ideas, that she needed a lab. Ethan said she would have a lab. He would go to Sarah and ask her to set aside a room. Minnie looked at him. Her eyes behind her glasses sparkled. She said thank you, quietly, like a child receiving a gift for the first time. Ethan nodded. He went to Sarah. He asked for a room for the lab. Sarah gave it to him without question. Then she asked what had happened. Ethan told her. Sarah clenched her fists so tightly her knuckles turned white. She said the guild would regret it. Ethan said there was no need for regret. They needed to defend themselves. Quietly, smartly, without war. For now. Sarah looked at him. There was something new, not respect, not anger, not fear. Trust. She trusted him. The first person in her entire life. She nodded. The 6th month. Ethan stood in front of a building on the southern outskirts of Silverhold and looked at the crooked sign. An old inn. Abandoned. 2 stories, stone walls, 10 rooms. The roof was leaking. The windows were broken. The yard was overgrown with weeds. But the walls were thick. The foundation was solid. A quiet alleyway far from the smithies and barracks. Perfect. He bought the building with the squad's money and his own savings, which were almost non-existent. Sarah added from the squad's fund. Marcus silently placed his monthly earnings on the table. Dirk and Rand chipped in. Lena sold the silver bracelet she had worn since childhood. Minnie offered everything she had. 3 copper coins, and an old book on alchemy. Ethan took the coins. He returned the book. He said it would still come in handy for her. The renovation took 2 weeks. Ethan worked from morning till night. He didn't sleep until late at night. His level wasn't rising these days. He was losing progress, but it was necessary. He couldn't help 20 people in the academy barracks. He needed a place of his own. He personally patched the holes in the roof. He installed glass in the windows. He hung doors. He furnished each room separately. Thick curtains made of black fabric bought from a tailor. Mattresses stuffed with wool, pillows, blankets. Each room received a small lavender sachet to place under the pillow, a mug for evening tea, a nightstand for a quartz nightlight. 10 rooms, 10 little fortresses of sleep. He hung a heavy lock on the front door. He barred the windows on the first floor. Minnie installed alchemical sensors at all the entrances. If anyone entered the building with a foreign substance on their hands, the sensors would silently signal. Protection against the guild's sabotage. Lena placed healing seals on every door. Protection against uninvited guests. Above the entrance, Ethan hung a sign, House of Quiet Dreams. Minnie drew a symbol, a closed eye with a crescent moon, a symbol of peace. Ethan opened the doors on the first evening of the 6th month. All 20 arrived, with Owen first. Everyone was assigned a room. Evening tea, Minnie's potion, instructions from Ethan. The curtains were drawn. The candles were extinguished. Quartz nightlights flickered with a warm glow. Silence. 20 people fell asleep in the House of Quiet Dreams. In the morning, they went outside. Some were crying. Others were laughing. Owen stood there looking at his hands, which weren't shaking. The blacksmith's wife said she'd seen her daughter in a dream, for the first time in 3 years. Not a nightmare, just her daughter, playing in the yard, smiling. She was crying and smiling at the same time. Ethan stood in the doorway and watched them. 20 people. 20 small victories over a 1,000-year-old lie. It was the beginning. A week later, 10 more people came to the house. 2 weeks later, 20 more. Ethan couldn't take them all in. 10 rooms. He started working 2 shifts. The evening group fell asleep at 9. They left in the morning. The night group arrived around 11. Minnie brewed potions around the clock. Her little lab in the dawn barracks smelled of chamomile and lavender. She was happy, for the first time in her life. News of the House of Quiet Dreams spread through the city like ripples on water. Not everyone reacted the same way. Many came out of curiosity, but many with contempt. A group of soldiers from the garrison came to the house one evening. 4 of them, drunk, angry. They shouted that it was a nest of slackers, that real warriors don't hide in dark rooms, that Clark was a disgrace to Silverhold. They threw a rock through the window. The glass shattered. A former guard with chronic insomnia was sleeping in the room. He woke up to the sound and screamed. Ethan went out to the soldiers, quietly, calmly. He looked at them. 4 burly men, pale, shaking, with bloodshot eyes. They hadn't slept for at least 3 days. Their bodies were pumped full of stimulants to the limit. Aggression, a classic side effect of chronic sleep deprivation. When a person goes without sleep for 3 days, their brain loses the ability to regulate emotions. The amygdala is working at full capacity. Fear and anger intensify tenfold. These men weren't evil. They were sick. Ethan told them to leave, calmly, without a threat. One of them swung his fist. Ethan caught his arm. Skill, steel muscles, 3rd rank, level 30. The soldier flinched. He couldn't break free. His eyes widened. Ethan held his hand gently. He wasn't squeezing, just holding. He looked him in the eyes. He told him he was tired, that he was shaking not from anger, but from sleeplessness, that his body was screaming for help, but he thought it was strength. The soldier froze. He looked at Ethan. His mouth was open, his eyes were wet. Ethan let go of his hand. He said that if they wanted to, they could come back tomorrow. Not to fight, to sleep. The four turned and left, silently. Two of them came the following evening, with mattresses. Ethan gave them rooms, tea, potions, curtains. They slept for 10 hours each. In the morning, one of them said he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt that way, and he uttered that very phrase. I didn't know it was possible to live like this. The House of Quiet Dreams became a dot on the map. A small one, invisible to the capital, but visible to Silverhold. Guards and bakers came here, soldiers and blacksmiths, healers and merchants. People who hadn't slept in years. People whom no one had ever taught to sleep. Ethan worked non-stop. He didn't get enough sleep himself. The irony cut him to the quick every evening. He taught people to sleep while failing to get any himself. His level had stalled at 32. His quality dropped to 72 on bad nights. Minnie noticed this. She came over one morning, serious, businesslike. She said he was destroying himself, that you can't save someone else's sleep at the expense of your own, that she could take over the evening shift, that Lena could help with training, that Owen, whom she already trusted, could guard the house at night. Ethan listened. A small 17-year-old girl in a stained apron stood before him and spoke like an adult manager. He nodded. She was right. He couldn't do everything alone. No one could. From that day on, the structure of the house changed. Minnie was in charge of potions and the evening reception. Lena was in charge of the medical examination of every new guest. Owen was in charge of security. Ethan was in charge of individual appointments. Every evening, he examined the new guests. He talked. He listened. He identified the cause of their insomnia. A different prescription for everyone. A different ritual for everyone. It wasn't a clinic. It was a home. A place where tired people could simply lie down and close their eyes without shame, without fear, without a voice in their head telling them they were weak. Ethan returned to a normal sleep pattern. His sleep quality rose back to 84. Level 33. A new skill unlocked. Aura of Tranquility. The description stated that people within a 5-meter radius of Ethan felt a slight drowsiness and muscle relaxation. The effect was weak, not combat-oriented, but people found it easier to fall asleep near him. He became a living sleeping pill, a human-shaped nightlight. He found out about this by accident. He was sitting next to Sira in the common room one evening. She was reading a patrol report. Her eyes began to droop. Her head was nodding. 10 minutes later, she fell asleep right at the table, face down in the papers. Ethan carefully removed the report from under her cheek. He placed a pillow there. He covered her with a blanket. Sira slept, peacefully, calmly, without nightmares. Her red hair was spread out across the table. Her face was relaxed, without a stony mask, without pain. Just a girl. Just a tired girl who was finally sleeping. Ethan looked at her and thought that this was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen in both worlds. He slipped out quietly, didn't wake her, didn't mention it in the morning, as always. The 7th month. Rumors of the House of Quiet Dreams reached the capital of Havenrick, not through spies, through people. A merchant from Silverhold brought goods to the capital and told the innkeeper that there was a place in their town where people were taught to sleep. The innkeeper told the guests told their friends, the friends told their neighbors. Within 2 weeks, half the capital was whispering about a guy who heals with sleep. The other half was whispering that it was heresy. Master of the Order of the Watchful, Caleb Thorne, heard these whispers and did not whisper. He shouted. The Order's meeting hall in the royal palace shook from his voice. Thorne was tall, withered. His face was stretched so tightly over his bones that it looked like a mask. His eyes were sunken deep into his skull. According to legend, he hadn't slept for 40 years. In reality, he had been secretly injecting himself with an experimental concoction from the Alchemists Guild, straight into a vein in his neck, every 6 hours. The compound replaced sleep but was destroying his body from the inside. His bones were as brittle as glass. His skin wouldn't heal from cuts. His heart beat erratically, skipping every 4th beat. He was dying, slowly, for 10 years now. But he believed. He believed with such strength that his faith kept him on his feet more firmly than any potion. Sleep is filth. Sleep is death. In sleep, the soul leaves the body and is defiled. Wakefulness is purity. Wakefulness is strength. These words were carved on the walls of every temple of the order. Thorn recited them every morning as a prayer. And now, some boy at a provincial academy was preaching the opposite. He taught people to sleep. He opened a house for the sleepers. He put the creature of the corruption to sleep with his bare hands. Thorn saw in this not just a threat, he saw the end of everything. If people began to sleep, they would see the truth, that the order had lied, that the doctrine was a mistake, that 400 years of wakefulness had killed more people than any war. Thorn could not allow that, not because he was evil, but because if the doctrine was a lie, then his entire life was a lie. 40 years without sleep, 40 years of pain, 40 years of slowly dying, all for nothing. It was unbearable. It was easier to destroy the boy than to admit it. Thorn sent an order. Not an assassin, an army. 3 squads of watchful warriors, 36 fanatics in white robes, the order's elite. They hadn't slept in years, pumped up with combat stimulants to the limit. The order was simple. Shut down the House of Quiet Dreams. Arrest Ethan Clark. Bring him to the capital to stand trial for heresy. Alive if possible. Dead if not. Ethan learned of the approaching squads 2 days in advance, not from spies, from Ji-un Park. The girl with black hair and a sharp tongue appeared in Silverhold at dawn on the 7th day of the 7th month. It was the first time Ethan had seen her. She stood at the door of the House of Quiet Dreams with a short blade at her belt and a travel bag slung over her shoulder. She said she had arrived from the Eastern Kingdom of Hansa as part of an exchange program. That on the road, she had encountered a column of watchful warriors heading toward Silverhold. That in her country, sleep is respected, though they've forgotten why. And that she wants to know who Ethan Clark is and why 36 fanatics are coming to kill him. Ethan offered her tea. She refused. She said, answers first, then tea. He told her, briefly. He didn't mention the system. He said he knows how to sleep properly, that he teaches others, that the order considers it heresy. Ji-un listened in silence. Then she said that her younger brother had died 2 years ago. He'd overtrained at the Hansen Academy. He hadn't slept for 5 days before his final exam. His heart stopped. He was 15. She had come here because she'd heard that in Silverhold, someone had found another way, a way that might have saved her brother if she'd known about it sooner. Ethan was silent. She wasn't crying, but her hands on her knees were clenched so tightly that her nails dug into her palms. He told her she needed to sleep. She hadn't slept for 2 days on the journey. She said, the war comes first, then sleep. Ethan said, there's a saying in his world, you can't pour from an empty cup. Yourself first, then the world. Ji-un looked at him for a long time. She smiled. She said he was a strange warrior. He replied that he wasn't a warrior. He's a sleepyhead. She almost smiled. Almost. Ethan gave her a room in the house. She lay down, didn't fall asleep right away. Anxiety, nightmares about her brother. Ethan knew this kind of insomnia. Grief. Survivor's guilt. The brain replays the same scene every time the eyes close. He brought her a weighted blanket. Not an ordinary one, a special one. He had sewn it over 3 days from an old raincoat stuffed with small bags of sand. A weighted blanket. A human invention. The weight creates pressure on the body. The pressure stimulates the release of serotonin and oxytocin. Anxiety decreases by 30%. The muscles relax. The brain stops replaying the trauma. He covered her legs, told her to breathe. 4 to 7 minus 8. Ji-eun closed her eyes. The weight of the blanket settled on her body like an embrace. For the first time in 2 years, she fell asleep without a nightmare about her brother. She woke up 9 hours later. She sat on the mattress and touched the blanket. Then she said quietly that she had dreamed of her brother, but not dead, alive. He was smiling and saying that everything was fine. She didn't cry. She just sat there, touching the blanket. Ethan stood in the doorway. He nodded. He left. 2 days. He had 2 days before the Watchers arrived. He assembled a squad. Sierra, Marcus, Dirk, Rand, Lena, Minnie, and Ji-eun, who said she was staying and would fight. 8 people against 36. Sierra said there was no chance. Marcus said he wouldn't run. Dirk and Rand exchanged glances and nodded. Lena clenched her fists. Minnie pulled a vial of something pink from her pocket and said she'd been working on something new. Ethan looked at them, at the 7 people ready to stand with him. He said there was no need to fight. The watchful warriors hadn't slept in years. They're pumped full of stimulants. They're strong, fast, dangerous. But their bodies were at their limit. Chronic sleep deprivation piles up like debt, and debt can be brought crashing down all at once. He laid out the plan. Minnie listened and smiled slowly, widely, childishly, terrifyingly. The Watchers arrived at dawn. 36 white robes entered Silverhold through the north gate. The guards didn't stop them. The order had the royal seal, the right to enter any city in Havenridge, the right to arrest without trial. They marched down the main street in a column, silently, heavily. Their faces were gray, their eyes sunken, their hands trembled beneath their robes. But essence burned around each of them with a dim white fire. The Order's battle essence, fueled not by rest, but by sheer will and stimulants. Filthy, unstable, but powerful. Residents hid in their homes, shutters closed, doors locked. No one wanted to stand in the way of the Watchers. They approached the House of Quiet Dreams at 7 in the morning. The squad commander stood before the door. He announced that by order of Magister Kyleb Thorne, the building was declared a hotbed of and was to be shut down. Everyone inside was to come out and surrender. Cadet Ethan Clark was declared a heretic and was to be arrested. The door opened. Ethan stepped out, alone, in his nightshirt, holding a mug of warm milk. He yawned. He looked at the 36 warriors in white robes. He took a sip of milk. He said it was too early for guests. The commander of the Watchers stepped forward. His hand rested on his sword. Ethan raised his free hand. He said that before they began, he would like to draw their attention to the morning breeze. The commander froze, puzzled. The wind was blowing from the south, warm, soft, fragrant, slightly sweet, floral, familiar, lavender. But not only that, something else, something that suddenly made his eyelids heavy. Minnie had been working all night. The pink vial she'd shown at the meeting contained a concentrated aerosol sedative. Sprayed into the air, it created a zone of increased drowsiness within a 30-meter radius. Not instant sleep, a gentle pressure, a slight heaviness in the body. slowed reactions. For a healthy, well-rested person, it was like a light post-lunch nap. You could shake it off. For people who hadn't slept in years, it was like a dam breaking. All those tons of accumulated fatigue, held in check by stimulants and willpower, suddenly lost their footing. Minnie sprayed the mixture through the house's ventilation ducts until dawn. The wind did the rest. 36 watchful warriors stood in a cloud of soft aerosol sedative and didn't understand why the world was spinning. The commander tried to grab his sword. His hand wouldn't obey. His fingers unclenched. The sword clattered against the stones. He looked at his hand, then at Ethan. Ethan stood there drinking milk, an aura of calm, a 5-meter radius. He took a step toward the commander, then another. The aura overlapped with Minnie's aerosol, a double effect. The commander swayed, his eyes rolled back, he fell to his knees. Then a second, a third, like dominoes, one after another. The standing warriors fell to their knees, on their sides, on their backs. Robes spread out across the cobblestones, swords clattered as they fell from weakened hands. Someone tried to resist. One warrior injected a dose of stimulant directly into his neck. He stood up, took a step toward Ethan. His eyes burned with fanatical fire. He took 2 steps, 3. On the 4th, his heart twitched. The stimulant, combined with the aerosol sedative, triggered a reaction. Not fatal, but painful. He clutched his chest and fell. Lena ran around the corner. She placed her hands on his chest. The essence surged through him. It stabilized his heartbeat. The warrior was breathing. He was alive, but asleep. 10 minutes later, it was all over. 36 watchful warriors lay in the square in front of the House of Quiet Dreams, asleep. For the first time in years, some for decades. Their faces relaxed, wrinkles smoothed out, clenched jaws softened. Someone was quietly sobbing in their sleep. Their bodies had finally received what had been denied them for so long: rest. Ethan finished his milk. He set the mug on the step. He looked at the sleepers. He turned to the squad, told them to carry them inside, to give each one a mattress, a pillow, a blanket. For Minnie to check the stimulants in their blood and administer the antidote. For Lena to examine each one. Sierra looked at him, asked why. They're enemies. They came to kill. Ethan looked at her. He said they weren't enemies. They were sick. They were the sickest people he'd ever seen in this world. And that the House of Quiet Dreams was for everyone, even for those who came to shut it down. Sierra looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded. The squad worked until noon. 36 bodies, 36 mattresses, 36 blankets. Marcus carried the warriors on his shoulders, 2 at a time. Dirk and Rand stripped them of their robes, removed their weapons, and laid them out. Ji-un stood guard at the entrance. Minnie ran between the sleeping figures with diagnostic vials. Lena treated them. Many of the watchers were in terrible condition. Shattered nerves, worn-out joints, microfractures in their bones, ulcers in their stomachs from stimulants. One of them had a heart arrhythmia that would have killed him in a month. Lena worked for 4 hours straight. Her essence flowed like a river, steady, pure, inexhaustible. 8 months of normal sleep had made her one of the strongest healers in the region. She didn't realize it herself. The watchers slept for a full day, 24 hours, some for 26. Their bodies were taking their toll. Years and decades of denied sleep came crashing down like an avalanche. Their bodies plunged into the deepest N3 phase and didn't emerge for hours. Minnie monitored their condition every hour. She recorded the readings. When the first watcher woke up after 26 hours, he sat up on the mattress and didn't know where he was. He looked at his hands. They weren't shaking. He brought his hand to his face. He touched his cheek. The skin was warm, soft, not dry, not tight. He looked around. A dark room, a soft mattress, a blanket smelling of lavender. Silence. Next to him stood a mug of cold tea and a note. The note had one word on it: "Good morning." He began to cry. Quietly, silently, like a child. He was 43 years old. He hadn't slept in 12 years. And only now did he realize how much it hurt. How much it had hurt all this time. His whole body, every day, every second. Pain he had considered normal, which he called strength, which he was proud of. It wasn't strength. It was torture. And it was over. For one night. For one impossibly beautiful night. The watchers woke up one by one. The reaction was the same. Silence, hands, tears, a note. Good morning. 20 out of 36 refused to return. They sat in the common room of the House of Quiet Dreams and were silent. No one knew what to say. They had been sent to arrest a heretic, and the heretic had put them to bed and given them blankets. The squad commander, a warrior named Garrett Foss, sat across from Ethan. His face was different, not gray, not stony, alive. He said he had to report to Thorn that the mission had failed, that Thorn would send others, more of them, more vicious, that next time would be worse. Ethan nodded. He asked what Garrett was going to do. Garrett was silent for a long time. Then he said he didn't know, that his whole life had been the order, that without the order, he was nothing, but that he could no longer stay awake. He physically couldn't, not after this night, not after he remembered what it was like. Ethan said he didn't have to decide right now, that he could stay, sleep, think, decide when he was ready. Garrett nodded. 16 watchers went back to the capital. 20 remained. 20 former fanatics slept in the House of Quiet Dreams. And every morning, they found a note. Good morning. Ethan wrote them all himself, every night before bed. 36 notes. Even for those who had left. He left them on the mattresses. The 8th month. News that 36 watchers had been put to sleep without a fight reached the capital in 3 days. The 16 who returned told the story. Master Thorn listened. His face remained motionless. Only a vein in his temple pulsed like a broken metronome. When they finished, Thorn rose silently. He left the hall. He locked himself in his cell. And for the first time in 40 years, his hands trembled. Not from stimulants, but from fear. 20 of his best warriors had betrayed the order, not in battle, in their sleep. They had been put to sleep, and they woke up as others. It was more terrifying than any sword. A sword kills the body. Sleep killed faith. Thorn took out a vial of an experimental compound. He injected it into his neck. The trembling subsided. The fear remained. He made a decision. Not squads. An army. He would go to the king, demand a full-scale military campaign against Silverhold, declare the city a hotbed of heresy. Ethan Clark must be publicly destroyed, burned in the capital's square, so that no one would dare utter the word dream ever again. In Silverhold, Ethan didn't know any of this. He was busy. Level 36. Sleep quality consistently at 86. Multiplier 3.1. His skills were growing. But the main thing wasn't happening to him. The main thing was happening to the city. The House of Quiet Dreams was operating at full capacity. 50 people a week passed through the 10 rooms. Minnie was brewing potions in batches of 100 vials. ON trained 3 former watchers to guard the house. Lena was admitting new patients and teaching 2 local healers her methods. The city was changing. The guards on the walls stood straighter. Their eyes were clear. The blacksmith forged with greater precision. The baker didn't burn the bread. Small things, dozens of small things. But together, they formed a picture. Silverhold was waking up, literally and figuratively. Garrett Foss had become an unexpected ally. The former commander of the Watchers knew the Order's structure from the inside. He knew their tactics, their weaknesses, their roots. He told Ethan everything, not out of revenge, out of exhaustion. He was tired of lying, tired of believing the lies, tired of not sleeping. Ethan listened and took notes. One evening, Ashley Drake came to see him. Tall, a scar across her eyebrow, the smell of alcohol. Red eyes, not from tears, from insomnia and booze. She was a mercenary, not from the academy, not from the army, a free agent. She fought for money. She drank for money. She didn't sleep because she couldn't. She said she'd heard about Dom, that she'd come not because she believed, but because she had nowhere else to go, that she hadn't slept properly in 5 years, that every time she closed her eyes, she saw faces, dead faces, people she had killed, people she hadn't saved, people who had died beside her. The war on the western border. 3 years in the meat grinder. She had survived, but her mind hadn't. Ethan knew what it was. PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder. In his world, it took years to treat. Therapy, medication, time. Here, no one even knew it was an illness. Here, it was called weakness. He didn't tell her about the illness. He didn't explain that her brain was stuck in fight mode and couldn't switch off. She wouldn't have listened. Instead, he told her to lie down. She said she wouldn't be able to fall asleep. He said she didn't need to fall asleep. Just lie there. He taught her the safe place technique. Close your eyes. Imagine a place where it's safe. Not a real one, any one. A place where no one dies. A place where it's quiet. Ashley closed her eyes. She was silent for a long time. Then she said she saw a kitchen, her mother's house. Mom is baking bread. It smells like dough and smoke. It's warm. The sun is shining through the window. A cat is sleeping on the windowsill. Her voice was trembling. Ethan told her to stay there, to breathe. 4, 7, 8. She took her time. He placed a pillow stuffed with lavender under her ear, covered her with a blanket, sat down beside her, silently. Just sat there. His aura of calm gently enveloped the room. Ashley lay with her eyes closed. Tears streamed down her temples. She didn't wipe them away. 40 minutes later, she fell asleep. Ethan didn't leave. He sat beside her for 3 hours, watching, waiting. If a nightmare began, he would see it in the movement of her eyes beneath her eyelids. The REM phase with a nightmare looks different from the normal one. The eyes move jerkily, chaotically. 2 hours later, the nightmare began. Ashley's eyes twitched, her lips pressed together, her fists clenched the blanket. Ethan placed his hand on her forehead. Warmth, an aura of calm, gentle pressure. Ashley's body relaxed, her eyes slowed, her fists unclenched. The nightmare receded. She continued sleeping. 7 o'clock. She woke up in the morning. She sat on the mattress and silently stared at the lavender pillow. Then she said she'd dreamed of her mom, that her mom was baking bread, that the cat was sitting on the windowsill, that it was warm. For the first time in 5 years, she hadn't dreamed of a fight. She turned her back to the wall. Her shoulders were shaking, silently, so he wouldn't hear. He heard, but he didn't show it. He left, closed the door, left a mug of warm tea and a note. Good morning. Ashley stayed. She didn't leave. She didn't pay. She didn't say goodbye. She just stayed. She started coming every evening. She lay down. A lavender pillow. A safe place. The kitchen. Mom. Bread. The cat. Breathing. Sleep. After a week, the nightmares became less frequent. After 2 weeks, they came every other night. After a month, once a week. She didn't stop drinking, but she started drinking less. Half a bottle instead of a whole one. Every other night instead of every night. Light wine instead of strong. Small steps, invisible, but sure. She began to help around the house. She repaired the roof. She chopped wood. She stood guard at night alongside Owen, not because Ethan asked her to, because she needed to keep her hands busy, hands that no longer held a sword. Ethan looked at her and saw a person slowly coming back, from the war, from the pain, from a 5-year nightmare. And he thought it was worth any risk, any order, any army. Meanwhile, Hana Yoon arrived in Silverhold quietly. No one noticed. She took off her princely robes and dressed like a simple traveler. She hid her long black hair under a scarf. Her delicate face was harder to hide. She came to the House of Quiet Dreams in the evening. She stood in line. She waited. When her turn came, Ethan looked at her and saw the emptiest eyes he had ever seen. Not sad, not angry, not tired. Empty, like the windows in an abandoned house. He asked what was troubling her. She said nothing, that she just wanted to try it, that she'd heard about this place. Ethan didn't believe her. Empty eyes don't mean the absence of a problem, but the absence of contact with oneself. This person felt nothing. No pain, no joy, no fatigue. Complete emotional burnout. He gave her a room, tea, a blanket. She lay down, closed her eyes, and fell asleep instantly. This surprised him. Usually, people with this degree of burnout can't fall asleep, but she slept as if she'd been switched off. Minnie checked. The potion wasn't the cause. Hana had simply shut down. The body that hadn't been allowed to sleep for 21 years collapsed the moment it was given permission. She slept for 14 hours. She woke up, sat on the mattress, and stared silently at the wall. Then she turned to Ethan, who had come in to check on her. She said one sentence. "I've never woken up without a schedule before." Ethan didn't get it right away. Then he did. Every day of her life had been scheduled down to the minute, since birth. Wake up, ritual. Class, training. Lunch, class, audience. Dinner, meditation. 3 hours of sleep. Wake up. Never. Not a single free morning. Not a single moment when she woke up on her own, without a voice behind the door telling her it was time. Ethan sat down next to her. He said today was a day off. She looked at him. She didn't understand. He repeated it. A day off. A day when she didn't have to do anything. Absolutely nothing. Henna looked at him as if he were speaking an unknown language. He brought her warm milk with cinnamon. He said she could drink it slowly, that she could sit and do nothing, that she could lie down again, that she could go out for a walk, that she could. She just could. Henna took the mug in both hands, slowly brought it to her lips, took a sip, closed her eyes, and for the first time in 21 years, her face changed. Not a smile, not tears, just the warm, living expression of a person who feels something. Something small and hot and sweet. Milk with cinnamon. She finished the milk, set the mug down, lay back down, pulled the blanket over herself, and slept for another 4 hours. Just because she could. Year 1, 3 months before the siege. Ethan stood in the basement of an abandoned temple 50 kilometers south of Silverhold and stared at the wall. A stone wall covered in writing, ancient, worn away by time, but still legible. Ji-Yun had found this place. She'd been searching for 3 months, rummaging through the Academy's archives, questioning monks from Eastern temples, comparing maps, following fragments of legends that everyone considered fairy tales. And she found it, the Temple of the Somnov civilization. People who slept for 10 hours and achieved the impossible. People who were destroyed 1,000 years ago. In the center of the wall stood a niche. In the niche lay a book, thin, bound in something resembling leather but softer, warm to the touch, as if alive. A symbol on the cover, a closed eye with a crescent moon. The same symbol Minnie had drawn on the sign of the House of Quiet Dreams. A coincidence that was no coincidence. The first book of dreams. Ethan took it in his hands. It was light. The pages were thin. The text was written in a language he didn't know, but the system window flashed, brightly, brighter than ever. Book of Dreams detected. New skill branch unlocked. Lucid dreaming. Access to the training space during REM sleep. Ethan stood and looked at the text. The letters slowly changed, rearranging themselves, becoming understandable. The system was translating, not instantly, word by word, like a person recalling a language they knew as a child. The first phrase. The sleeper sees further than the waking person because in a dream the eyes are closed, but the mind is open. The second phrase. Train in your dreams as you would in waking life. Movement performed in a lucid dream strengthens the same neural pathways as real movement. 8 hours of sleep are 8 hours of training for those who know how to see. Ethan read, and his breathing slowed. He knew about lucid dreaming. In his world, it was a well-studied technique, lucid dreaming, a state in which the sleeper realizes they are dreaming and can control the dream. Athletes used it for mental training. Pianists learned pieces in their sleep. Surgeons practiced surgeries in their dreams. Neurophysiology confirmed it. The motor cortex functions the same way in sleep and in waking life. Muscle memory is formed in both states. The Book of Dreams contained the same knowledge, but deeper, more detailed, with techniques that in his world were unknown. Methods for entering lucid dreams in 3 minutes. Methods for maintaining control throughout the night. Methods for creating training spaces where the laws of physics obey the sleeper's will. And one technique that made Ethan sit on the floor and remain silent for a long time. Somnov's Lullaby, a battle spell, the only one in the book. A song in the Somnov language that induces forced sleep in everyone who hears it. The strength of the effect depends on the singer's state. The deeper the singer's rest, the stronger the lullaby. A perfectly rested singer can put an army to sleep. An exhausted one won't put anyone to sleep. A weapon that works only in the hands of someone who has had a good night's sleep. The perfect weapon for Ethan. They returned to Silverhold with the book. Ethan began practicing lucid dreaming that very night. He lay down. Mattress, curtain, lavender, mask, milk, Minnie's potion. 4, 7, 8 breathing, falling asleep. Stage N1, N2, N3. REM. At the border between N3 and REM, he performed the technique from the book. A mental movement of the hand at the moment of phase transition. A signal to the brain that consciousness is active. The world of sleep condensed around him. He stood in the void, white, endless. A training space. He visualized the Academy's training hall. The space obediently reshaped itself. Wooden walls, punching bags, sand beneath his feet. Everything as real as life. Ethan struck the pillar. His fist passed right through it. No, he needed concentration. He imagined the pillar as solid, real. He struck again. Contact. The pillar shook, his knuckles ached. Just like in real life. He trained for 8 hours in his dream. Strikes, dodges, movements, the basic forms he'd seen with Sira and Marcus. He didn't become a genius fighter overnight, but his body had memorized the movements. Muscle memory formed during the REM phase, just as it did in reality. In the morning, he woke up. Level 40. A leap. A huge leap. Lucid dreaming multiplied his experience. The REM phase, which had previously provided only coordination and neural connections, now provided full-fledged combat experience. 8 hours of sleep equaled 8 hours of training plus 8 hours of recovery. 16 hours of progress in 8 hours in bed. Skills poured in like a flood. Essence Blade. The ability to shape essence into a cutting form. Shadow Step. Instantaneous movement over a short distance. Second rank, Aura of Tranquility. 10-meter radius. The drowsiness was stronger. And the lullaby. He practiced it in his sleep. He sang in the language of the Somnovs. The language came on its own. From the system, from the book, from something deeper. The words fell into the melody he remembered from childhood. His mother's lullaby. The one she sang to him in the basement when he was sick. A simple melody. 3 notes up, 2 down. Repeat. The Somnov words fit it like a glove. Ethan sang in his sleep, and the training space around him grew dark. Imaginary opponents slowed down, fell to their knees, fell asleep. It worked. He woke up. Sarah was standing by the door, on watch. She said he'd been singing in his sleep, quietly, in a strange language, that she'd almost fallen asleep to his voice while sitting in a chair, and that it was beautiful. Ethan looked at her. Red hair, green eyes, a face that no longer looked exhausted. The dark circles under her eyes had faded after months of normal sleep. Her skin was warm, her cheeks were rosy. She was beautiful. He had known it before, but now, for the first time, he allowed himself to think it. She said she liked it when he sang. Then she blushed, turned away, left. Ethan lay on the mattress and stared at the ceiling. He smiled. Level 40. The Book of Dreams. Lucid Dreaming. Somnov's Lullaby. For the first time in a year in this world, he felt he could win. Not the battle, not the war. Everything. To change everything. In 3 months, Thorn would lead an army. In 3 months, there would be a siege. In 3 months, Silverhold's fate would be decided. And Ethan would be ready, because he had 3 months of nights. And every night was training. Every night is growth. Every night is a weapon. He closed his eyes, fell asleep. The system window counted silently. Level 41, Year 2. The army of the Order of the Watchers approached Silverhold at dawn. 2,000 warriors in white robes. Behind them, supply wagons laden with stimulants. Ahead, on a black horse, sat Magister Caleb Thorn. Thin, withered, a living skeleton in a golden robe. His eyes burned with a feverish fire. He hadn't slept in 41 years. His body was sustained by an experimental concoction and fanatical will. Every bone creaked with movement. Every breath came with pain. But he sat upright. He looked at the city walls. And he hated. The walls of Silverhold were fortified. The city had changed over the past year. Ethan had changed it. The guards on the walls stood at attention, eyes clear, hands firm, well rested. 300 fighters on the walls, against 2,000. The numbers were not in their favor. But the numbers didn't account for one thing. All 300 defenders had slept at least 7 hours every night for the past 6 months. Their bodies were operating at full capacity. Their essence burned bright and pure. Their nerves transmitted signals without delay. Each of them was worth 3 from Thorn's army. The math was on Ethan's side. But Thorn hadn't brought a 3-to-1 ratio. He'd brought a 7-to-1 ratio. The math didn't cover that. Ethan stood on the central tower and looked out at the white sea of cloaks. Sierra stood beside him, sword drawn, face calm. Marcus to the right, fists burning with essence. Bright, pure. He was already level 35 by the standards of ordinary warriors. A year of normal sleep had turned him into a machine. Dirk and Rand on the left flank of the wall, synchronized like a single organism. Lena in the hospital at the foot of the wall. 20 beds, a 3-day supply of potions. 3 healers she had trained, ready. Minnie in the lab, 50 aerosol vials, 200 doses of sleeping potion, 30 smoke bombs with soporific gas, a small army of glass vials. Ji-un on the south wall, 2 short blades, eyes cold. She wasn't afraid. She was angry. For her brother, for everyone whose brothers this sleepless world had killed. Ashley at the gate, sword in hand. For the first time in a year, her hands didn't tremble. Her eyes were dry. She was ready to fight. Not out of anger, out of gratitude. For the lavender pillow, for her mother baking bread in her sleep, for every morning when a note said good morning. Henna on the eastern wall, upright, regal. She had revealed her origins a month ago, princess of the Principality of Wayland. She had sent a letter home, asked for reinforcements. There was no reply. But she stood her ground, because for the first time, she stood not by schedule, but by choice. Garrett Foss and 19 former Watchers stood by the north wall, in white robes, but with a new symbol on their chests, a closed eye with a crescent moon over the Order's open eye. They were a bridge between what was and what would be. Thorn sent a messenger. The terms were simple. Hand over Ethan Clark, close the House of Quiet Dreams, return to the doctrine of vigilance. Silverhold would be forgiven. Ethan climbed down from the wall. He walked out through the gate, alone. Sierra wanted to go with him. He said no, that he needed to speak with Thorn in person. He walked across the field between the wall and the army. Thousands of eyes watched him. Not tall, not muscular, not menacing. Just an ordinary guy, in plain clothes, unarmed, without armor. He stopped 20 paces from Thorn. The Magister looked down at him from his horse. His face was impassive. Only his eyes burned. Thorn said that here he was, the sleeping demon, the boy who wants to drown the world in sleep. Ethan looked at him. He saw everything. Cracks in the bones visible through the taut skin, a tremor in the fingers hidden by gloves, a heart arrhythmia noticeable in the pulsation of the vein at the temple, a jaundiced tinge to the whites of his eyes. His liver was dying. His kidneys were dying. Everything was dying. This man was a corpse who had forgotten to lie down. Ethan felt no hatred. He felt pity, so sharp it cut his throat. He said he didn't want war, that he didn't want anyone to die, that he was offering something else. Thorn laughed, a dry, cracked laugh. He asked what the heretic was offering. Ethan said he was offering him a place to sleep. Silence. 2,000 people were silent. Thorn stopped laughing. His eyes narrowed. He said it was an insult, that he hadn't slept in 41 years, that every waking hour had been devoted to service, that he wouldn't break. Ethan said he wasn't suggesting he break. He was suggesting he rest. One night. If in the morning Thorn decides that sleep is filth, let him continue the war. One night, one chance. Thorn looked at him. For a long time. 2,000 warriors waited. 300 defenders waited. The world waited. Thorn said no and ordered the attack. The army moved. White robes surged toward the walls like a tide. Ethan stood on the field. He didn't run. He didn't retreat. He looked at the wave of people coming to kill him. And he saw what he always saw. Tired, sick, broken. People whom no one had ever taught to sleep. He closed his eyes, took a breath, deep, counting to 4, hold, 7, exhale, 8. Stillness. Absolute stillness. Level 100. 3 months of lucid dreaming. Thousands of hours of training in his sleep. The Book of Dreams read cover to cover. Every technique mastered, every word memorized, every note of the lullaby ingrained in his bones. He opened his mouth and sang, softly, in the language of Somnov. His mother's melody from the basement. 3 notes up, 2 down, repeat. The words of an ancient people who loved sleep more than power. Who knew that true power is born in peace? Ethan's voice was soft, but it carried within it the essence of peace of such purity that this world had not heard in 1,000 years. A second-rank aura of peace, a radius of 10 meters. But the lullaby amplified the aura, carried it further. The voice flowed across the field like a warm breeze. 20 meters, 50, 100, 200. The army's front row slowed. The warriors stared ahead with glazed eyes. Their legs grew heavy. Their swords dropped. One fell to his knees. Then a second. A third. The lullaby rolled through the ranks, soft, warm, unstoppable. It didn't strike. It didn't cut. It didn't burn. It simply told everybody what it had wanted to hear for 1,000 years. It's okay. It's okay to stop. It's okay to close your eyes. It's okay to lie down. It's okay to sleep. Enough. You're so tired. Enough. Warriors fell by the dozens, by the hundreds. White robes fell onto the grass like snow. People fell asleep on the move. Some fell face first into the ground. Some sank slowly like a felled tree. Some sat down, hugging their knees, and closed their eyes. Some were crying, in their sleep. Tears streamed down gray cheeks, down sunken eyes, down cracked lips. 40 years, 30, 20, 10. Everyone had their own time, their own debt. And now that debt had come crashing down, not as a punishment, as a mercy, as forgiveness, like a warm blanket on the shoulders of someone frozen. Thorn was screaming. His voice cut through the air. He ordered them to stand up, to fight, not to give in. He was shooting stimulant after stimulant into himself. 1 dose, 2, 3. His body was shaking. His bones were creaking. Blood was flowing from his nose. He jumped off his horse. He walked toward Ethan, staggering, falling to his knees, getting up, falling again. A lullaby embraced him, crushed him, pulled him down. 41 years without sleep. 41 years of accumulated debt. An avalanche, a tsunami, a universe of exhaustion crashing down on a single man. Thorn fell to his knees before Ethan. His hands opened. The stimulator fell from his fingers. He raised his eyes, full of tears, full of pain, full of something he hadn't felt in so long that he'd forgotten what it was called. He said he didn't remember. When was the last time? His voice broke. Ethan stopped singing. He knelt down beside him. He placed his hand on the old man's neck. Warm, soft, just like his mother used to do when he was sick. He whispered that it was enough, that he was so tired, that it was time to sleep. Just sleep. master of the Order of the Watchers, a man who hadn't slept in 41 years, a fanatic, a murderer, a tyrant. He closed his eyes and fell asleep in the arms of a nerdy boy from another world. His face relaxed. The wrinkles didn't disappear, but they smoothed out. His clenched jaw softened, his fists unclenched. For the first time in 41 years, Caleb Thorne slept. The field before Silverhold was quiet. 2,000 warriors slept on the grass. White robes spread out like a carpet. Swords lay nearby. Silence. Peace. Tranquility. The war had ended without a single death. On the walls of Silverhold, 300 defenders stood and watched. No one shouted victory. No one celebrated. They looked at the sleeping enemies and remained silent. Because just a year ago, each of them had been the same. Gray, exhausted, dying of exhaustion. And everyone knew there was no difference between them and those sleeping on the field. Except for one. They were lucky to have met Ethan sooner. Syrah climbed down from the wall. She walked over to Ethan. He was sitting on the grass next to Thorne, tired. The lullaby had taken almost all of his essence. His eyes were closing. He looked at Syrah, at Lena running across the field toward the wounded, at Marcus standing by the gate with teary eyes, at Ji-yoon sheathing her blades, at Minnie clutching an empty flask to her chest, at Ashley sitting on the step and smiling, at Han standing straight and calm, her face showing an expression for the first time. Not emptiness, not duty. Joy. Quiet. Real. 7 people. 7 broken people whom he had mended. Not with a sword, not with force. With pillows, tea, curtains, blankets, lullabies, milk with honey and cinnamon. Sarah sat down beside him. She rested her head on his shoulder. She said nothing. He said nothing. The sun was rising over Silverhold, warm, golden. In a month, the king of Havenrich would sign the Decree of Sleep, mandatory 8 hours for all warriors of the kingdom. The House of Quiet Dreams would be the first of 100 across the continent. Minnie would open the Guild of Sleep Alchemists. Lena would lead a new corps of healers. Ji-yoon will take the Book of Dreams to Hansen and open the first Eastern Academy of Sleep. Ashley will become the head of the security corps for the Houses of Quiet Dreams throughout Havenrich. Henna will return to her principality and introduce days off for the first time in the history of Wayland. Garrett Foss will disband the Order of the Watchful and create the Order of the Sleep Guardians. Marcus will become the first hardened one to openly admit that he sleeps 9 hours and isn't ashamed of it. Dirk and Rand will open a school for paired martial arts, where the first rule will be lights out at 10 o'clock. And Syrah Venholt. She'll become a general, like her father. But unlike her father, she won't die of exhaustion. She'll sleep every night, next to the man who taught her that sleep isn't a weakness, that caring isn't a disgrace, that sometimes the strongest act in the world is simply to lie down and close your eyes. But that will come later. Right now, Ethan was sitting on the warm grass. Syrah's head was on his shoulder. 2,000 people slept peacefully all around them. The morning breeze smelled of lavender. And he too drifted off to sleep. Quietly. Gently. On the grass, under the sun. No mattress, no curtains, no mask. Just like that. Because the peace was inside him. Not in the room, not in the potion, not in the system. In him. The system window flashed one last time. Sleep quality 100 out of 100. For the first time, absolute peace. Ethan Clark, former basement nerd, dropout from the Department of Somnology, loser who slept through his entire first life, the first Grand Master of Dreams in 1,000 years. Level 100, sleeping on the grass and smiling in his sleep.